You're thirsty, so you crack open a soda can and take a few big gulps. Next thing you know, you're out of commission. Turns out, that can was contaminated with something nasty, like rat urine, and you had no clue. Just goes to show, you never know what might be lurking in that seemingly innocent drink. During transportation, storage, or handling, cans can pick up germs, bacteria, and dirt. When you drink straight from the can, those germs can easily enter your body. Cans are often stored in warehouses and rarely get a good cleaning before they reach you. Warehouse conditions can be pretty gross. Think rats running over them and less than ideal hygiene. To stay safe, it's a good idea to clean cans before drinking from them. Experts suggest giving them a quick wash with soap and water to avoid contamination. Studies have shown that unwashed bottles can be full of bacteria, so this step is really important. Now, quick question. Who's taken out more people, sharks or vending machines? Surprisingly, vending machines have a darker history. Let's dive in. But first, let's define what counts as a vending machine casualty. We'll rule out things like expired snacks or electric shocks. Those aren't the machine's fault. What we do count are incidents where someone was severely harmed or, what's worse, passed away from rocking or tilting the machine. For sharks, any fatal encounter counts. In a 1995 report, there were 2 severe incidents that ended up in demise and 1 serious injury linked to vending machines. Since 1978, there have been at least 37 such incidents and 113 injuries, which gives us about 2 fatalities per year. Compare that to 1 shark-related incident in 2021. However, this data is quite old. Since 2008, there haven't been any reported vending machine incidents. Why the drop? It could be due to warning signs and credit card readers reducing the need to shake machines. But remember, your risk varies based on where you live and your habits. In the end, the vending machine versus shark comparison isn't quite accurate anymore. Today, you're more likely to have a serious encounter with a shark than a vending machine. But the point remains, sharks aren't the bloodthirsty hunters they're made out to be. So, someone pointed out your visible nose hairs, and now you're looking for ways to deal with them. You might think plucking is the way to go, but hold up, it's not as safe as you think. Here are 3 solid reasons to avoid plucking your nose hair. Your nose is full of delicate nerves, follicles, and plenty of bacteria. Plucking nose hair can damage the sensitive skin inside your nostrils, letting germs in and causing issues like infections and inflammation. Also, just like with waxing, plucking nose hair can result in ingrown hairs. As the hair grows back, it might curl into the follicle, causing bumps, discomfort, and inflammation. This can lead to folliculitis, which shows up as small, pus-filled red bumps and can be itchy or painful. In severe cases, plucking nose hairs can cause nasal furunculosis, a deep follicle infection with swelling and discomfort. This infection can spread to blood vessels near the brain, potentially leading to cavernous sinus thrombosis, a condition where blood clots form behind the eye sockets. If not treated, this condition can be life-threatening and may cause permanent brain damage. To avoid these problems, go for trimming your nose hair instead. Trimming doesn't make your hair grow back thicker or faster, and it helps maintain the right amount of nose hair to keep out pathogens. Contact lenses are meant to help you see, but they can make you turn completely blind. One big no-no is wearing your contacts in the shower. It's bad for both your lenses and your eye health. Showering with contacts is like swimming or sleeping with them in. It's a common mistake. Water and contacts just don't mix. You need to keep your lenses clean to avoid any issues. If water gets behind your lens, germs or chemicals like chlorine can get in there and cause trouble. At best, you might end up with sore or itchy eyes. Worse, you could get conjunctivitis from a bacterial infection. In rare, serious cases, you might even face infections, which can sometimes lead to blindness. Most people wear contacts in the shower accidentally rather than doing it on purpose. If this happens, close your eyes right away and carefully step out of the shower to remove your lenses. If your eyes feel sore or look red afterward, contact your optometrist ASAP. Always use the cleaning solution your optometrist recommends to sterilize your lenses before putting them back in. But really, it's best to take out your contacts before showering or bathing. If there's one piece of home decor you should keep a close eye on, it's snow globes. They might seem harmless, but a family in East Hampton, Massachusetts would beg to differ. In a crazy turn of events, a snow globe sparked a fire in their apartment while no one was home. Luckily, quick-thinking neighbors and a swift response from the fire department kept the blaze from spreading through the entire complex. It was a normal Thursday morning when, around 11:30 a.m., neighbors heard smoke alarms blaring in the apartment and dialed 911. Firefighters arrived to find the place locked, so they had to force their way in. Inside, they found a small fire on the coffee table and a room filled with smoke. There, they also saw the culprit. It was a snow globe. It was sitting just right on the coffee table, and the sunlight hit it at the perfect angle, magnifying onto some cardboard and styrofoam and setting them on fire. While it's not common, fires started by magnified sunlight do happen. Many firefighters have seen blazes ignited by mirrors and magnifying glasses. So, keep those snow globes out of direct sunlight. Better safe than sorry. Alright, let's talk about fatal fruit. No, I'm not going to bore you with another lame list of the most poisonous fruits out there. Instead, I'm going to tell you about something heavenly tasty that can make you teleport to the heavens in a matter of seconds. Meet the coconut. This seemingly innocent fruit has a dark side. Coconuts are responsible for around 150 fatalities each year. These bad boys have a whole page dedicated to the fatal incidents they've caused. A full-size coconut weighs about 3 pounds 3 ounces. And if you know a thing or two about physics, you'll understand that gravity makes them even more dangerous when they fall from trees. But it's not just falling coconuts you need to worry about. Consuming large amounts of coconut water can lead to sudden cardiac arrest due to hyperkalemia, thanks to its high potassium levels. And while rare, there have been cases of anaphylaxis in people with coconut allergies. While the most common way coconuts cause harm is by falling and hitting someone, there have been some unusual incidents too. In December 1923, a man in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, passed away while trying to crack open a coconut with the butt end of a loaded revolver. It went off, and he was shot in the abdomen. You know those handy selfie sticks that help you nail the perfect shot? Turns out, they can be way more dangerous than you'd expect. These little gadgets have led to a surprising amount of injuries and even some fatalities. People have accidentally knocked themselves or others out, taken a tumble off cliffs, and even been hit by cars while trying to get that Insta-worthy pic. Some popular landmarks have even banned selfie sticks altogether. For instance, the oceanfront in Mumbai has said no to selfie sticks. India, by the way, leads the world in selfie-related deaths. Nearly 40% of the 49 globally recorded fatalities over the past 3 years happened there. If you still think selfie accidents aren't a big deal, consider this. From 2008 to mid-2021, a staggering 379 people lost their lives while trying to get that perfect shot. So yeah, it's definitely something to take seriously. For hundreds of years, people in the US have reported hearing strange, loud booms. These mysterious sounds are called skyquakes. And yep, it's a real thing. If you've ever heard a loud, distant booming noise that definitely wasn't a thunderstorm or a car engine backfire, congrats, it looks like you've experienced a skyquake yourself. People report them all around the globe, from the US to India and Japan. They go under different names, and we still don't know why exactly they happen. Sometimes these booms come together with earthquakes. People heard them during the New Madrid earthquakes in the early 19th century and up until January 2020. Those who've experienced them describe skyquakes as a rushing or rolling noise. Famous American writer James Fenimore Cooper described it more poetically as the lake speaking to the surrounding hills, which send back the echoes of its voice in accurate reply. Sometimes these mysterious booms happen in cold weather instead of during earthquakes. One of the skyquake hotspots is near Lake Seneca in New York. They call them the Seneca guns. The booms can be so loud that they shake windows and doors. Back in August 1886, after an earthquake in Charleston, people heard these noises for several weeks, happening at the same time as many aftershocks from the earthquake. In 2020, scientists from the University of North Carolina looked at old news pieces, especially from North Carolina, where people have often reported these sounds. They hoped to match the noises with earthquakes data, but they didn't find any link between the sounds and earthquakes. One of the researchers said they believe the noises are happening in the air, not underground. The team looked at infrasounds, which are low-frequency noises that humans can't hear. They found signals lasting 1 to 10 seconds that matched the times when people reported hearing the booms, but nothing is certain here. Some people think that solar flares, underwater tsunamis, or caves collapsing under the sea cause skyquakes. Others believe the sounds come from planes making loud sonic booms. But that doesn't explain old records of skyquakes from the past before planes were even invented. Some scientists think a type of meteor called a bolide causes these booms. These meteors blow up when they hit Earth's atmosphere. If this happened above thick clouds, the sound would get louder and travel far, but we wouldn't find anything on the ground. Another idea is that gas might be escaping from the bottom of deep lakes, like Lake Seneca. If you think skyquakes are bizarre, let me introduce you to fog bows. They also go under the name of white rainbows, ghost rainbows, or cloud bows. They form in a similar way to regular colorful rainbows, but are much wider. Rainbows happen when there are big raindrops in the sky, and you can always spot them on the opposite side of where the sun is shining. Fog bows are made by tiny droplets in fog, or clouds, instead of big raindrops, and they also appear opposite the sun. If you want to see a fog bow, you need to look for it in a thin fog when the sun is bright. You might catch one when the sun starts to shine through the fog, or if you're near the ocean where fog often forms. Because the water droplets in fog are so tiny, fog bows don't have bright colors like rainbows. They might even look all white, or just have faint colors. Some fog bows are hard to see at first because they blend into the mist, but once you spot them, they're easy to recognize. The next rare weather phenomenon you gotta watch out for is thunder snow. You guessed it right, it's a special type of thunderstorm that happens during a snowstorm. Unlike regular thunderstorms that often strike in the spring and summer, thunder snow is much rarer because it happens in the strongest winter storms, like big blizzards, and at the same time needs warm air, which isn't a frequent combo. So, for thunder snow to happen, there needs to be moisture in the air, some instability, and something to lift the air, like rising winds. Just like in normal thunderstorms, lightning can appear when you hear thunder. Thunder snow lightning usually goes from cloud to cloud instead of hitting the ground, and the thunder sounds different too, more like a low rumble instead of a loud boom, because the snow muffles the sound. You aren't so likely to get struck by it, but it's still important to stay inside when you hear thunder to stay safe. Northern Lights fans, this one is for you. Scientists noticed a new kind of glow in the sky that looked like a purple streak. They nicknamed it Steve as a joke, but later gave it a more scientific name: Strong Thermal Emission Velocity Enhancement, Steve for short. Steve is actually a fast-moving stream of super hot gas that always moves west and only shows up before midnight. They wondered if something like Steve could happen after midnight, but moving in the opposite direction. And now, scientists think they found the anti-Steve by looking at data from a research station in Norway. In December 2021, they took a picture of a bright purple streak stretching for 620 miles in the sky, and it only appeared after midnight. Satellites from the European Space Agency also measured the conditions in this part of the sky and found that the ions were moving eastward. Steve's late-night twin hasn't been officially named yet, but it would be cool if it was called Sam, which is short for Steve after midnight. If you've ever seen snow on a sunny day when falling from the sky without a single cloud, it must have been diamond dust. It's a special kind of weather with millions of tiny ice crystals forming close to the ground. These ice crystals float slowly in the air, kind of like how dust floats in your house. When sunlight hits these crystals, they sparkle like diamonds. Unlike regular snow, diamond dust can fall from a cloudless sky, which is why they sometimes call it clear sky precipitation. It happens because of temperature inversion. Normally, it gets colder as you go higher up from the ground. But in a temperature inversion, the cold air stays near the ground, and warmer air sits above it. The warm air has more water vapor, and when it mixes with cold air near the ground, it turns directly into ice crystals, and diamond dust is born. For this to happen, the air near the ground has to be really cold, way below freezing temperature. Diamond dust can fall for days, but it's so light that it usually doesn't pile up on the ground like regular snow. A fall streak hole, also known as a hole punch cloud, is next on our list. This big circular or oval-shaped gap sometimes appears in certain clouds. These types of clouds float high up in the sky and are often made of tiny water droplets that are colder than freezing, but they haven't frozen yet. These special water droplets are called supercooled, and they need a reason to freeze. Ice crystals give them that reason. When a plane flies through the cloud, it can bring those ice crystals into the cloud. Once the ice crystals are there, the supercooled water droplets freeze quickly, get bigger, and start to fall from the ground. This creates a hole in the cloud, and as more nearby droplets freeze, the hole gets bigger and spreads outward. Any tornado is scary, but a fire tornado takes the horror to a new level. These bad boys are spinning towers of flame and ash that form when there's extreme heat, strong winds, and uneven ground. The intense heat from the fire causes hot air to rise quickly. Cooler air from the sides rushes in to replace it and creates strong winds. When winds from different directions meet, it makes the fire spin like a tornado. It gets stronger and can even create its own weather. It pulls in flames, ash, dirt, and anything in its path. The winds can reach speeds of over 140 miles per hour, and these fire tornadoes can last for more than 20 minutes. A label on your panties digging into your most sensitive spots is definitely not the best feeling. Sure, you can cut it off, but often that just leaves even sharper corners that can be more annoying. But what if you've been cutting those labels wrong this whole time? Check it out. On the left, the label is sewn into the seam, while on the right, it's just hanging on by a couple of threads. Just snip those threads, and voila! It's like the label was never even there. Plus, with this little hack, you can always pick panties in the store that are guaranteed to be comfy. If you've traveled to Europe recently, you may have noticed how nasty the bottle caps have become. Yeah, according to the law, they now have to scratch your nose. They have to be attached right to the bottle. If these bottles annoy you too, try this. Once you open the bottle, rotate the cap 90 degrees and pull until one of the plastic connections breaks. And finally, turn the bottle until the cap touches your chin, not your nose, and drink. You've been using the colander in the wrong way all this time. This smart kitchen device has a hidden function. The traditional way of draining noodles involves dumping boiled noodles into a colander, right? But if your colander is about the same size as your pot, try this instead. Place the colander on top of the pot with the noodles, like a lid, and drain the water out. This method is faster and less messy, and it keeps your noodles in the pot where they belong. Toilet plungers and sink plungers are quite different, and the toilet version has a handy rubber flap called a flange that pops out from the cup. This flange fits snugly over toilet drains, giving you strong suction to tackle stubborn clogs. While a sink plunger won't help with toilet troubles, the toilet plunger can work on your sink or tub. Just make sure to keep that flap tucked inside the cup. And don't forget to give it a thorough clean with bleach before switching from toilet to sink use. You definitely don't want to mix things up. If you still work in an office, next time you print out something, make sure to check out this stapler built right into the printer. It can staple all the documents that fit in the slot at the same time. By the way, it's not something new. Such printers have been around since the 90s. Why buy a ruler and spend your hard-earned dollars if you can simply use a dollar bill to measure whatever you want? Only as long as this whatever is somewhere around 6 inches. A dollar bill is just about this size. Even though many people are sure that those tiny holes on the bottom left side of your iPhone are the speaker, they're actually a microphone. And speaking of iPhones, if you've got one of the latest models and your phone is out of juice but there's no socket to be found nearby, here's a nifty trick. Grab a double-ended charger cord and connect it to another iPhone 15. Boom! Your phone gets a little power boost. I bet you've noticed that the hook on a tape measure is a little loose. Well, that's intentional. The hook moves just enough to account for its own thickness, ensuring both inside and outside measurements are accurate. So if you ever thought it was broken, nope, it's just doing its job. As for the hole at the end, it's replacing the tape on the edge of a nail to get measurements from odd spots. The pockets on new suits are sewn shut to keep the jacket's shape during transportation and display. Of course, you can unpick them to use the pockets, but you need to be careful with what you put there. Anything heavy can easily distort the suit's shape. The important thing, though, is to remember to cut the threads holding the back vents together for better movement and comfort. Oh, and remember to cut those tacky stitches that fasten your new coat's vent, that flap on the back. Now, that sink squeegee thing actually hides a big secret. It can store water. Many sink squeegees have tiny holes that allow water to stay inside. But why would we need that water? Oh, you can release it as you squeegee, which will help you rinse the sink as you clean it. Here's a travel tip that will help you understand U.S. highways. In the U.S., highways with even numbers run east-west, and those with odd numbers run north-south. If a highway number starts with an odd digit, it's a spur, which means it doesn't reconnect to the main highway. If it starts with an even digit, it's a loop around or through a city that eventually reconnects with the main highway. And finally, numbers divisible by 5 are major highways meant for cross-country travel. Your iPhone camera can also translate laundry symbols, identify plants, and even recognize some bird species. It's like having a mini encyclopedia in your pocket. Another trick: when using the markup feature while editing your photos, you might want to highlight a part of a picture. Put a circle around the needed area and keep your finger pressed down at the end of the stroke. Voila! Instead of a misshapen circle, you get a perfect one. It also works for squares, triangles, and stars. Barilla, probably the most famous pasta in the world, has teamed up with Spotify to create playlists that match the cooking time for different pasta shapes. Just start the playlist when you drop the pasta into boiling water. And when the music stops, your pasta is ready. Toasters have crumb trays at the bottom that you can and should clean regularly. Just slide it out and dump the crumbs. It's an easy way to keep your toaster clean and working well. You can use Google Maps to share your location in real time. Just tap your account icon, select Location Sharing, and choose how long to share. Your friends can track your progress and be ready when you arrive. You can also save your parking location by clicking the blue dot. Do you know that the knobs on some ovens have calibration screws on the back? You can adjust them to get more accurate temperature control. It'll definitely help you avoid overcooking or undercooking your meals. In non-prepaid gas stations in the US, try pressing Enter before swiping your debit or credit card. It'll take you to the prepaid screen, and you can enter the amount you need manually. If you're drinking outside on a windy day, place some coins in an empty cup, and then put the cup you're drinking from inside the first one. The weight of the coins will help you keep your drink from getting blown over. Simple, but effective. Once you've peeled your potato, you might spot some tiny divots, known as eyes, that still have some skin on them. Many peelers come with a handy scoop designed to tackle these little guys. Just take the scoop, dig in, and pop them out. Easy peasy. Your favorite potato recipe will be totally eye-free in no time. A cell phone's camera can help you to figure out whether your remote is working. The camera is sensitive to infrared, so you just need to turn it on and point the remote at the camera while pressing the remote's buttons. You'll see the LED flashing in response. If you spot nothing, something is definitely wrong with the remote. Bonus fact here: white vinegar isn't just for cooking, it's also the real laundry hero. If you add it to your laundry, it'll take out all the bad smells from your clothes. The amount to add can be anywhere from a splash to a cup during the wash. And don't worry about the vinegar smell. It washes away completely, leaving your clothes fresh. It's also great for removing hard water buildup.
A recent study suggests the universe is similar to your brain, only at a much larger scale. The brain's neural network contains about 86 billion neurons. The observable universe has at least 100 billion galaxies. Both galaxies and neurons have a similar structure. It's a complex web of nodes linking up long thread-like fibers. But in each of these systems, the fibers make up a mere 30% of the total mass, and the remaining 70% are either water in the brain or dark energy in the universe. The ways that galaxies and webs of neurons connect with one another are surprisingly similar. In both cases, the process follows the same physical principles. At the same time, some researchers claim the resemblance between the brain and the universe is only superficial. Your mind perceives tiny details and joins them, and then it comes up with a conclusion that has nothing in common with reality, like the brain is a mini-universe. In billions of years, the universe is likely to expand so much that we won't be able to see any stars in the sky. To turn Earth into a black hole, you'd have to squeeze it until it was the size of a marble. And if you wanted the sun to become a black hole, you'd have to compress it until it's no more than 4 miles across. A starburst galaxy is a galaxy that's forming tons of new stars at breakneck speed. It usually happens after 2 galaxies merge into one. While Earth has only one natural satellite, Jupiter is surrounded by at least 79 moons. In the universe, there are not only dwarf planets, but also dwarf galaxies. They have from 1,000 to a few billion stars. For comparison, the Milky Way galaxy is made up of 250 to 400 billion stars. A supermassive black hole 250 million light-years away from Earth hums the deepest sound ever detected from any object in the universe. It's 1 quadrillion, which is 1 with 15 zeros, times deeper than what the human ear can hear. Planet Kelt 9b is 670 light-years away from Earth. It's an ultra-hot Jupiter. Those are giant, scorching hot planets with a mass similar to that of Jupiter. On Kelt 9b, the heat is so great on the day side of the planet, it tears molecules apart. Any liquid floating in outer space forms itself into a sphere. It also happens in low Earth orbit. Our home Milky Way galaxy is more than 105,000 light-years across. All the planets of the solar system would fit between Earth and the Moon, with some space to spare. Black holes spaghettify things. It happens when something gets past the point of no return. Then the black hole's gravitational pull starts to stretch this object in one direction and squeeze in another. The first celestial body that astronomers identified as a spiral was the Whirlpool Galaxy. Its long arms are made of gas and stars, and everything is sprinkled with fine space dust. When you're on Earth, you can only see 5% of the universe. A star coming too close to a black hole can be torn apart by its gravitational force. WASP 12b is a giant planet 1,400 light-years away from Earth. It's made up mostly of gas. Unfortunately, the planet is doomed. It orbits too close to its parent star. In about 10 million years, WASP 12b will be swallowed by its greedy sun. Our Milky Way galaxy and the Andromeda Galaxy, its closest neighbor, are going to meet in a bit less than 4 billion years. When they collide, they'll form one huge elliptical galaxy. One of Saturn's smaller moons, Enceladus, reflects almost 90% of the sun's light. It makes the moon one of the brightest objects in the solar system. But since it reflects sunlight instead of absorbing it, the temperatures on Enceladus's icy surface drop to -330 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest mountain in the solar system is Olympus Mons on Mars. It's 3 times as high as Mount Everest. If you were standing on top of Olympus Mons, its slopes would be hidden by the planet's curvature. In our solar system, Mercury and Venus are the only 2 planets without moons. Scientists who are planning to send droids to Mars want to load the machines with lots of heavy equipment. The droids will also be built from stronger materials, all because of the relatively low gravity on the red planet. Everything on Mars is almost 3 times lighter than on Earth. Pluto's largest moon is half the size of the dwarf planet itself. This makes Charon, that's the moon's name, the largest known satellite relative to its parent size. There are 3 golf balls on the moon. They were launched during the Apollo 14 mission. Mathematicians claim white holes might exist, even though scientists haven't found one yet. If you came across a white hole, you wouldn't be able to enter it from the outside, but you'd see light and matter escaping from within. On our planet, one full rotation takes 1 day, but the sun is so enormous that it needs 25 to 35 Earth days to make one rotation. The moon is not a perfect sphere. It's shaped more like an egg because of the Earth's gravity. Spacesuits protect astronauts from huge temperature differences during spacewalks, from -250 degrees Fahrenheit to +250 degrees Fahrenheit. A neutron star gets born after a supernova collapses. After birth, it rotates extremely fast, about 60 times per second. But this rate can sometimes grow up to 600 times per second. In 2007, astronomers started to receive ultra-bright and ultra-strong radio signals. Named fast radio bursts, they were coming from somewhere billions of light-years away. When astronauts are in space, they often see random flashes of light. They occur when cosmic rays hit the optic nerve in the eye. If you traveled around Pluto's equator, it would be the same distance as walking from Rome to New York City. If you visited GJ 504b, a planet located a mere 57 light-years away from Earth, you'd see that the planet is glowing. It's because of the heat left after its formation. The planet's color is a dull magenta, like a dark cherry blossom. Jupiter has the shortest day of all the planets in the solar system. It lasts just 9 hours and 55 minutes. Because of its fast rotation, Jupiter isn't a perfect sphere. It's a bit flattened. Venus has more volcanoes than any other planet in the solar system. There are at least 1,600 of them on the planet's surface, but most of them are extinct. Mercury has wrinkles. When its iron core was cooling, the planet's crust contracted. It made the surface of the planet uneven. Nuclear pasta found inside neutron stars is believed to be the strongest substance in the universe. These noodles of neutrons can be 10 billion times stronger than steel. Some astronomers believe black holes might have no event horizon, aka the point of no return. Instead, there might be the apparent horizon. It can only trap stuff for some time. Later, matter or energy escapes, but in a different form. Each Apollo mission needed 15 spacesuits. Each member of the three-person main crew needed 3 suits. One was for training, the second for flight, and there was also a backup suit in case something went wrong with the flight suit. And each of the 3 members of the backup crew had 2 spacesuits, one for training and one for flight. Scientists believe Mercury might still have a partially molten core. It could explain why the planet has a magnetic field, even if it's just 1% as strong as Earth's. Dust storms on Mars are the most severe in the whole solar system. They can be raging for months on end. On planet Kepler 16b, which is 245 light-years away from Earth, not one, but 2 suns set over the horizon. The planet is as massive as our Saturn, but has a higher density. It takes 45 minutes to put on a spacesuit. After it's done, an astronaut needs another hour to adapt to new conditions. Earth-grazing fireballs are bright meteors that enter the Earth's atmosphere but then leave it again. Triton, one of Neptune's moons, orbits the planet backward. It's the only big moon of any known planet to do so. Triton is also gradually getting closer to Neptune. Experts think that, eventually, the moon will be pulled apart by Neptune's gravity, and then it'll form a ring around the gas giant. Dwarf planet Haumea, which is further from Earth than Neptune, is truly bizarre. It's orbiting in the Kuiper Belt, a donut-shaped ring of ice objects circling the sun. Haumea has 2 moons, a weirdly elongated shape, and a day that lasts 4 Earth hours. But the coolest thing, the dwarf planet is surrounded by incredibly thin rings. They're likely the result of an ancient collision. It takes Neptune almost 165 Earth years to make one full orbit around the Sun. In other words, since the gas giant was discovered in 1846, it's only circled the Sun once.
You'd need a drop of liquid, a state-of-the-art laser 3D printer, and a couple of hours of work to make the tiniest fidget spinner ever. Its width will be smaller than that of your hair strand. At least researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory managed to do just that. A double-stuffed Oreo cookie aren't double-stuffed, in fact. A math teacher weighed 10 regular Oreos, 10 double-stuffed Oreos, 10 mega-stuffed Oreos. Turns out, double-stuffed Oreos are only 1.86 stuffed Oreos. Chipotle peppers aren't some special type of pepper. They're good old jalapenos. Dried and smoked jalapeno is chipotle. In its gaseous form, oxygen is colorless and doesn't have any odor. But when it's liquid or solid, this substance looks pale blue. After being caught by a black hole, a star gets ripped apart by its enormous gravitational forces. Some parts of the star's remains hurtle into the black hole. The rest, in the form of a huge jet of plasma, is ejected with such force that it travels hundreds of light years away. Not so long ago, scientists decided the dino's family tree had to be redrawn for the first time in 130 years. Apparently, 2 species of dinosaurs had to be grouped together from the very beginning. Those were the lizard-hipped meat-eaters like T-Rex and bird-hipped vegetarians such as the Stegosaurus. A camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in a bit more than 10 minutes. This water is stored in the animal's bloodstream. As for its fatty hump, it provides the camel with nourishment when there's little food around. Some sea animals like salmon or turtles use our planet's magnetic field to find their way home. Your lungs not only help you breathe, but they also produce blood cells. These cells are responsible for the clotting which stops bleeding. The lungs make more than 10 million of these tiny cells per hour. Only 2 letters never appear on the periodic table. Those are J and Q. Spin a ball when you drop it and it'll fly through the air while falling. This phenomenon is known as the Magnus effect. You can see it at work in different sports, for example tennis or baseball. Anatidaephobia is the fear that at any point, Somewhere in the world, a duck or a goose may be watching you. The person isn't necessarily afraid that the duck or goose will get close to them or even touch them. They just don't like the feeling of being watched. It was first described in a comic strip to show you how anyone can be afraid of anything. Anything can be a phobia. A duck just watching my every move would certainly give me the heebie-jeebies. I might just quack up. Your favorite fruit candies may be shining because they're covered with carnauba wax. Many fruits, especially apples, have a thin layer of this wax too. Not only can it make the candies and fruit appear glossy, but it also makes your car shine. Peaches and nectarines seem different, but in fact, they're pretty much the same fruit. If the fluffiness gene is dominant, we get peaches. If not, we get smooth nectarines. Crows are pretty good at recognizing people's faces and have been found to remember people for a long time. This could be a good or a bad thing, depending on how nice you are to them. You don't want to come across a crow that's holding a grudge against you. You probably can't tell which crow is which very easily, so it might be better to play it safe and just give them a little wave. In the city of Yoro in Central America, they have an annual event known as the Rain of Fish. Not that the locals get a choice for it anyways. Every year in May or June, a torrential rainstorm rolls through the town, leaving a mass of fish flopping around in the streets. The phenomenon is believed to be caused by water spouts or water tornadoes, which drop the fish far from their home. Seafood delivery for free? Yes, please. A single strand of spaghetti onto your fork has a name. It's called a spaghetto. In the Italian language, an I at the end of a word means that it's plural, while an O is singular. This goes for all types, like gnocco instead of gnocchi, fettuccino instead of fettuccini, and raviolo for a single parcel of goodness. Water can freeze and boil at the same time. This is called the triple point. That's when a substance can be solid, liquid, and gaseous at the same time. But there's only one pressure temperature that can make it possible. We're used to ranch dressing being white, but in reality, producers usually add titanium dioxide to make it as white as your sunscreen. Oh, sunscreen producers add some titanium dioxide to their products too. Same with Caesar and blue cheese dressings. Our moon used to have an atmosphere. Several volcanic eruptions happened on Earth's natural satellite around 4 billion years ago. They released immense volumes of gas, trillions of tons. It was so much that the gas didn't have enough time to escape into space. That's how an atmosphere was formed. Cold water heats up faster than hot. The speed of this process depends on the temperature difference between the liquid and its surroundings. That's why cold water needs less time to absorb heat, but it doesn't mean it'll boil faster than hot water. Zealandia is a drowned continent in the Pacific Ocean. It's often described as a continental fragment or a microcontinent. Its area is almost 2 million square miles, about half as big as the US. It went underwater about 23 million years ago. New Zealand is Zealandia's largest part that remains above sea level. People are still evolving. Scientists have been tracking several millions of human anomalies. It turns out some harmful genes are slowly but surely getting filtered out of human DNA. Stars look as if they're twinkling because of the turbulence in Earth's atmosphere. It makes the light from the stars move in a different direction before reaching our eyes, and this looks as if the light is shaking. It takes water 1,000 years to complete its continuous journey around the world. The whole process is known as the global ocean conveyor belt. Bismuth is a brittle, shiny white metal with a pink tinge. If you melt it and then let it cool really slowly, it'll form iridescent cubic crystals. Those Skittles and M&M candies are colored with beetles. Red food dye is made of carmine, which is made with cochineal beetles. Red lipsticks are made with these beetles too. The rocks, metals, and other minerals and things that make up the planet are packed into the ground more tightly in certain places than in others. This has surprising consequences. Gravity varies slightly depending on where you are. How high up you are also has an effect, so if you're at the top of Mount Everest, you'd also weigh slightly less. Don't look down. One scientist has a theory that a substance existed in ancient microbes before chlorophyll, that's the thing that makes plants green, evolved on Earth. This substance reflected sunlight as red and violet colors, which combined to make purple. If true, the young Earth may have been teeming with strange purple-colored critters before all the green stuff appeared. Apples taste better when they're sliced because they're exposed to oxygen. It activates the enzyme called polyphenol oxidase, responsible for ripening and visible browning. The same thing happens when you hit an apple. The oxygen enters the apple through tiny cracks and it starts to ripen. Are you into white chocolate? Well, it's actually not even close to real chocolate. It's basically a mixture of sugar, milk, vanilla, and cocoa butter. Cocoa butter isn't enough for chocolate. It should contain chocolate liquor or powder. The only product that never expires, even if you don't store it in the fridge, is honey. It has a low pH and lots of sugar. That's why organisms that cause spoiling can't live in honey. If two pieces of the same kind of metal touch in space, they bond and get stuck together. It doesn't happen on Earth because water and air keeps pieces apart. People are more honest when they're tired. That's why most confessions are made during late-night conversations. Firefighters usually extinguish flames with wet water. It's water mixed with special wetting agents. These are chemicals that help water soak into objects and spread everywhere more easily. The Sun is an average-sized star, and still it could fit 1,300,000 Earths. The star is also 333,000 times as heavy as our planet. People have been able to spell their emails in Morse code since 2004. That's when a new symbol, @ was added to the code for the first time. The character is actually called a comet and consists of the A and C signals with no break in between.
Now, with selfies taking over the social media world, phone companies had to adapt to the way people hold their phones and use their cameras. Apparently, most users tilt their heads slightly to the right when taking selfies. With the camera located in the left corner, it makes it easier to make sure the camera will be in line with the usual tilt of selfie takers. Ooh, genius. This allows for a more natural look, making the image look better to leave you feeling great. Cameras on the back of most phones are on the left side as well. Sorry, left-handers, this was designed for the more common right-hander. Mount Everest might be getting all the attention, but Mauna Kea in Hawaii is technically the tallest mountain in the world. Measuring over 33,000 feet from base to summit, the only thing holding Mauna Kea back from the title is that it's mostly underwater. Australia is wider than the Moon. The Moon has a diameter of over 2,100 miles, while Australia's diameter from coast to coast is almost 2,500 miles. While it may be wider, the Moon wins with the land area, over 15 million square miles. Whew, that's huge. And all that cheese. Antididophobia is the fear that at any point, somewhere in the world, a duck or goose may be watching you. The person isn't necessarily afraid that the duck or goose will get too close to them or even touch them. They just don't like the feeling of being watched. It was first described in a comic strip to show how anyone can be afraid of anything. Anything can be a phobia. A duck just watching my every move would certainly give me the heebie-jeebies. I might just quack up. Crows are pretty good at recognizing people's faces and have even been found to remember people for a long time. This could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how nice you are to them. You don't want to come across a crow that's holding a grudge against you. You probably can't tell which crow is which very easily, so it might be better to play it safe and just give them all a little wave. In the city of Yoro in Central America, they have an annual event known as the Rain of Fish. Not that the locals get a choice for it anyways. Every year in May or June, a torrential rainstorm rolls through town, leaving a mass of fish flopping around in the streets. The phenomenon is believed to be caused by waterspouts or water tornadoes, which drop the fish far from home. Seafood delivery for free? Yes, please. A photon, the most basic part of light, takes thousands, maybe millions of years to travel from the sun's core to its surface. But it only takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds on average to get to your eye once it's at the surface. That means that the sunlight we see is very ancient, older than the human race itself. There are only 4 words in the English language which end in "dos." Tremendous, horrendous, stupendous, and hazardous. Sounds like the teacher's comment on my report card. A single strand of spaghetti onto your fork has a name. It's called a spaghetto. In the Italian language, an I at the end of the word means that it's plural, while an O is singular. This goes for all types, like gnocco instead of gnocchi, fettuccino instead of fettuccine, and raviolo for a single parcel of goodness. Accidentally eating one of those fruit stickers on apples, peaches, and pears shouldn't worry you at all. They can be eaten, but they aren't exactly edible. It'll just leave your body as everything else does. The glue used for them is regulated by the FDA, but it's still recommended that you wash the fruit and remove the sticker before chomping down on it. Dolphins not only have names for each other, but they'll call out for their friends specifically. Makes you wonder what names dolphins have for us when we get in the water. Hey, look, Frank, those hairless monkeys are back in the water again. German chocolate cake is one of the most delicious cakes out there. It's my all-time favorite. But its name has nothing to do with the country at all. Named after an American baker called Samuel German, who made the tasty treat in 1852. The Eiffel Tower can be 6 inches taller during the summer because of thermal expansion. When the iron heats up during really hot days, the iron particles expand, taking up even more space. 2 planets in our solar system rotate the opposite way as the others. Venus and Uranus have this backward rotation. Venus also has the longest day of any planet in our solar system, completing a rotation every 243 Earth days. A baby puffin has the adorable name of Puffling. To feed its chick, the puffin parent will carry about 10 fish in its beak at a time. While you sleep, you can't smell anything, even really bad or potent smells. Our taste and smell senses are cut down by 50 to 20% during flights. This is why airplane food always tastes like cardboard or too salty. Sounds like a pretty convenient excuse from the airlines to me. Look at any watch advertisements, and the time on display should be 10:10. This is because of the positive effect it has. It looks like a smile, and usually the brand name of the watch is directly below the 12. Stewardesses is the longest word that is typed with only the left side of the keyboard. The word itself isn't used much anymore. Most people say flight attendant instead. Those dum-dums who call out, "Hey, you," are normally invited to exit the aircraft mid-flight. The longest English word is a crazy 189,819 letters long. I won't spell it out here, but it's the full name for the large protein nicknamed Titan. To say this out loud would take over 3 hours. So grab a snack and settle back, because we're going to be here for a while. Nah, I wouldn't do that to you. Eunoia, at 6 letters long, is the shortest word in the English language that contains all 5 main vowels. Eunoia means beautiful thinking or well mind. It's rarely used these days in the medical field. And if you add 2 of them, you'd then have a para-eunoia. Nah, not really. Glass balls can bounce higher than rubber ones. When a rubber ball hits a surface, it deforms before returning to its original shape. And a lot of energy is lost in this process. A glass ball doesn't compress at all, keeping a lot of its energy for the bounce back up. Here's a flash. Kangaroos can't walk backward. Their long feet and heavy tail make walking impossible, forward or backward. They can move side to side with incredible agility, but jumping back is impossible because of that large muscular tail. So let's go to the hop. The loneliest creature on Earth is a whale that's been calling for a mate for a long time. Researchers identified the whale's abnormally high call decades ago, and is believed to have never received a response. The unknown whale is called lonely because it communicates at a frequency not used by any other whale in the Pacific Ocean. How sad. Meanwhile, the lyrebird can mimic almost any sound it hears, including chainsaws. The Australian species not only copy other birds, but other animals too, like koalas and dogs. In captivity, they'll also copy artificial sounds, such as car alarms, trucks, and chainsaws. The Northern Hemisphere holds roughly 90% of the world's population. No wonder the streets are so crowded up here. The cougar goes by more names than any other animal. The cougar has been given over 80 names. The puma, mountain lion, panther, and catamount are all the same thing. Just don't confuse them with bobcats, lynxes, jaguars, or leopards. They don't appreciate that. Most people can't lick their own elbow. The length of your arm combined with the flexibility of your joints makes this impossible for many. Your elbow is just far enough down on your arm that you can't reach it. Go ahead, try it. I'll wait. Okay, time's up. Octopuses and squids have beaks like birds. The beak is made of the same material that our fingernails are made of, keratin. They can also fit through anything that their beak can, making them the ultimate escape artist. Not you, Houdini. There are over 31 million seconds in a year. We recently discovered this tiny chameleon in Madagascar. At less than an inch long, it's the size of a seed and could fit easily on the tip of your finger. It's nicknamed the nano lizard and shows how many tiny creatures could be hiding out undiscovered, away from the eyes of scientists and researchers. 11 plus 2 equals 13, of course, and 12 plus 1 equals 13. The 13 letters that make up these phrases equal each other in more ways than one. They are actually anagrams of each other. Wow. Anagrams, homonyms, and antidophobia. That's a mouthful, but not as sweet as my German chocolate cake. Hey, I'll take seconds. Squirrels' teeth never stop growing, but the animals wear them down by gnawing on nuts and other hard foods. The front of the rodent's teeth is actually orange. It's because they're covered in special tough enamel. Bet you're glad you don't have that to deal with. Some bird species don't mind munching on chili peppers. That's because they can't feel the heat. Peppers burn your mouth because they contain a special chemical, capsaicin, but birds don't have the taste buds needed to feel its effects. The rhino's horn is made of hair, or at least the same protein that makes up your hair and nails. This protein is called keratin. Such a horn is kinda unique since other animals have horns with a bony center. The woodpecker can peck the wood 20 times per second. This pace is almost too high for the human eye to notice. How much wood would a woodpecker peck if a woodpecker could peck wood? The number of pecks often reaches a total of 8,000 to 12,000 a day. A starfish does have eyes, one on the end of each of its arms. These eyes are light-sensitive groups of cells. Frogs don't need to drink water. Instead, they have an area known as the drinking patch. It's on their bellies and thighs. They use it to absorb water directly through the skin. Well, that could save some time. Most caterpillar species have around 4,000 muscles in their body, and almost 250 of them are in the head alone. Christmas tree worms are much more beautiful than you can imagine. But even though the pines look awesome, 2/3 of the worm's body is hidden in a calcium carbonate tube. And the point of this is, I don't have one. Narwhals' famous tusks are actually their teeth that are kind of turned inside out. These unicorns of the sea have just 2 teeth, and in males, one of them grows right through their upper lip. Unlike your teeth, this one is tough inside and sensitive and soft on the outside. The anteater doesn't have teeth, but it's not a problem. This creature has a super long tongue. This tongue helps the animal lap up more than 35,000 termites and ants every day. Well, that's one way to lick hunger. The flea can jump more than 200 times their body length. If humans had such an ability, they would jump as high as the Empire State Building. Woohoo! The red-eyed tree frog's eggs can hatch earlier if they sense their environment isn't safe. Small animals with fast metabolism see in slow-mo. This helps them escape larger creatures. Koalas' fingerprints are very, very similar to the human ones. Sometimes these animals' fingerprints even get confused at crime scenes, probably in Australia. The hippo's sweat is pink and not exactly sweat. It's a reddish, oily fluid. Its function is to not cool the body, but to moisturize the skin and protect it. This fluid also functions as an antibiotic. So, you get sunburn or cut, you can smear a hippo all over you. Polar bear skin is black, and the hairs of their coat are hollow and almost see-through. These animals have fur growing even on the bottom of their paws. This gives them a better grip on ice and protects against cold. Some species of tarantulas, some of the largest spiders in the world, can live without food for more than 2 years. I still think they're creepy. Platypuses close their eyes while kissing, swimming. They have special folds of skin covering their ears and eyes. They prevent water from getting inside. These animals' nostrils also have a watertight seal. Emus can't walk backwards, but scientists aren't sure why. These flightless birds are the only ones that have calf muscles. Emus can sprint really fast. They can also travel long distances, but they can't back up. Crocodiles can't move their tongue because it's attached to the mouth roof. It keeps the throat closed and protects the animal's airway. Water snakes, dolphins, whales, alligators, crocodiles, and turtles can drown. It'll happen if they stay underwater for too long. These animals can't breathe in the water. They can just hold their breath for a very long time. Only one species of birds can fly backwards. That's hummingbirds. Hey, go talk to the emu. These tiny birds can also beat their wings up to 80 times per second. Despite what elephant shrews look like, these small animals are more closely related to elephants than shrews. Maybe that's why they have their trademark trunk-like noses. Elephant shrews use them to munch on insects. True enough. Cats, as well as other felines, can't taste sweet things. They don't have the taste buds needed for that. Too bad, more for me. Flamingos can only eat with their heads upside down. That's why their lower bill is massive and their upper bill isn't fixed. Such an arrangement is perfect for upside-down feeding. But it's the opposite of what other birds have. It's not easy being pink. Tiger skin is as striped as their fur. That's all I have to say about that. When toucans sleep, they curl into pretty tight balls. These birds can turn their head so that their tail covers their head and the beak rests on the back. So yeah, they have a ball. The ostrich has some of the largest eyes in the animal kingdom. They're more massive than a bird's brain. Each eye is as big as a billiard ball. All clownfish get born male, but in some circumstances, they can turn into females. This change is irreversible. Unlike most fish, when seahorses mate, they do it for life. Even cuter, when the mates travel, they move side by side and often hold on to each other's tails. The male usually gets stuck schlepping the luggage. Termites never sleep. They don't need to recharge their batteries. But they can eat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on your house. The sloth needs up to 2 weeks to digest its food. Hey, take your time, no hurry, nothing on the schedule. Dogs' nose prints can be used for their identification. They are similar to human fingerprints and unique for each animal. Owls don't have eyeballs. Instead, they have eye tubes that don't move in the eye sockets. Penguins don't have external ears, but their hearing is especially sharp, especially when they're on the lookout for polar bears. Shh, let's not tell them. Jellyfish are up to 98% water. That's why when they get washed ashore, their bodies can evaporate into the air after just a few hours. If a traffic jam happens underwater, an alligator will always give way to a manatee. Nice manners. Grizzly bears have such a strong bite that they can crush a bowling ball. So it's smart just to let them win. Giant pandas aren't picky about their sleeping spots. They usually fall asleep wherever they are, in most cases right on the forest floor. The giant panda's newborn cubs are tiny. They weigh like a small cup of coffee and are smaller than a mouse. The red handfish can walk along the ocean floor with the help of its hands. But of course, they are not hands, but evolved fins. Really. Cats don't usually meow at each other. A study has shown the felines use this way of communication mostly to get attention from us humans. And it works. Sloths can't shiver. It's not that they're too busy digesting that 2-week-old meal. Their fur is sometimes covered with algae, and when they get too hot or too cold, their metabolism shuts down. During the hard times, immortal jellyfish transform themselves back into their younger state. Once they reach the stage when they're nothing but a blob of tissue, like me, these creatures start to grow again, and this process can apparently repeat again and again. The closest living relatives of the T-Rex are chickens and ostriches. Don't turn your back. The moray eel has another set of jaws that can extend from his throat. First, the main jaws close around an unlucky sea creature. Then the additional set grabs the eel's future meal with backward-pointing razor-sharp teeth. And after that, the captured animal gets dragged back into the eel's throat. I just lost my appetite. Some species of snails have hairy shells. Thanks to these hairs, snails can better stick to wet surfaces. When humpback whales hunt, they often gather in a group and apply a bubble net tactic to catch their food. The bubbles don't let the schools of fish get away. Snow leopards can't roar like other large felines. It has to do with their less developed vocal cords. But these animals can meow, growl, hiss, and even purr. Not to drift away from their group while napping, sea otters hold hands. They can also entangle themselves in giant seaweed for the same purpose. Hey, it kelps. Lions are often called the king of the prairie. I thought it was the king of the jungle. And still, up to 90% of all the hunting in the pride is done by the females. The males are in charge of protecting the territory and the pride members. And they make the delicious potato salad known as Hakuna Matata. Cats are famous for their uncanny ability to move their ears, all because kitties have 32 muscles in each outer ear. Some shark species can glow in the dark. Unfortunately, only other sharks can see this greenish glimmer. You have up to 8,000 taste buds, but your pooch has just a bit over 1,500. The blue jay can imitate other birds. Its favorite is a hawk's call. The blue jay uses it to scare away other birds from its territory. Slow lories are insanely cute and just as treacherous. They're the only known venomous primates. They have a gland in the crook of their inner arm. It secretes toxins that can cause unpleasant consequences in people. The hartebeest has an amazing evasion tactic. To run away from other animals, they move in a zigzag pattern. Bottlenose dolphins have names for one another. Those are specific whistles. Hey Bob, hey Charlie, hey Dolly, hey boys, and thanks for all the fish. Giraffes have long, and I mean it, black tongues. Scientists suppose this color might protect the tongue from getting sunburned. Well, that's all I got. See ya.
There are two sides to every story. Just like to a regular cotton pad. Two different textures, to be more precise. One is smooth, and you're supposed to use it for more sensitive areas of your face, for example, the eyes. The rougher side can help you remove makeup and clean your face in less sensitive areas, like the forehead. If you like having greenery in your home, you've probably noticed the flower pots have holes at the bottom. These holes are the reason your green friends live a happy life. They're extremely important for water drainage. Thanks to these holes, you'll avoid stagnant water buildup that can eventually ruin your plant. Also, thanks to those holes, roots can grow and expand beyond the limits of your pot. Have you noticed aviator sunglasses mostly have green lenses? It has something to do with their origin. First, they showed up in the 1930s. Before that, pilots had goggles to protect their eyes while they were in the air. High altitudes with glaring sun and sub-zero temperatures were a real test for their eyes. The goggles helped them with those issues, but there was another one. Since the temperature differences between the air outside and within the goggles were big, the lenses would fog up and obscure the pilot's view. So, the company Bausch & Lomb came up with teardrop lenses surrounded by a light metal frame. These lenses were dark green because this tint cuts out blue light, which is also a problem for pilots when they're flying above the cloud line. Plus, green lenses also reduce glare and improve contrast and sharpness. Holes in the side of your Converse sneakers? Are those really necessary? Well, they allow air to enter your shoe so your feet can stay cool. You can also use them to style up your shoes and tie them in different ways too. There are two reasons plastic bottles have grooves. First, if you're drinking cold water and it's hot outside, you'll see there's a lot of condensation on your bottle. Or maybe if you're playing some sport or working out. Your hands are sweaty, and if a bottle had a smooth surface, it would be more difficult to grip it. So the ridges are there to improve your hand grip. The second reason is that because of these ridges, manufacturers can use thinner plastic. That means they need less material in overall production. And that plastic is still firm enough for the bottle to maintain its shape. Wooden coat hangers are not just there to look nice. Since they're made of cedar wood, they bring a nice scent to your closet. Plus, they repel bugs. They're also quite firm, so they come in handy for heavy clothes, such as jackets. And it's hard to damage them. So, they'll serve you longer. You may have noticed there's a colored square at the bottom of your toothpaste. These blocks mostly come in blue, red, green, and black. They are some sort of eye marks, since they help manufacturing machines at the assembly line recognize where and when to cut the toothpaste and seal the end of the tube. Some boots have loops at their top and back. Looks like a fashion statement, doesn't it? Or maybe it's something that manufacturers add for fun. But those loops actually have their purpose. With them, you can pull the shoe up when trying to wear it. Plus, you can easily hang them or use the loop for better support for the laces. Confession time. Remember those attachments your vacuum cleaner came with? Did you also put them somewhere aside and never use them again? They're actually pretty helpful when you're cleaning the house because you can use them for particular areas that are sometimes hard to reach with the regular attachment. We all know what the vegetable peeler is for, but besides peeling the skin of carrots or potatoes, you can use it for onions too. It may be faster than doing it with a knife, plus it will save you some onion tears. Some sweatshirts have something pretty specific in the neck area. A V-shaped stitch you can see in the middle of the collar. The ribbed insert, similar to the ribbing at the hem and the sleeves, would allow the owner to put the garment on more easily, and it wouldn't even lose shape. The V-insert would stretch, so a person wearing the sweatshirt could get their head through the neck. Its purpose was also to absorb sweat. In its early versions, sweatshirts had both the back and the front of the collars. Through time, they lost the back one, and this V-insert became something decorative since manufacturers started to stitch a V at the collar without using the ribbed material they had added before. Brightly colored squares or circles you see on food packages aren't an indication of vitamins, minerals, or certain flavors that food contains. And nope, it's not some secret code consumers are supposed to crack. It's actually for printing engineers. They're called process control patches or printer's color blocks. During the process of printing the food packaging, manufacturers use those colored blocks to check if the printing ink is correct. They compare the color of blocks they print to make sure the brand they print for has a consistent and recognizable quality all over the world. The majority of printers only use 4 colors: yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. Some printers have additional colors, such as green, orange, and violet. That's why you sometimes see multiple circles on certain packages. They test each ink color. Margins in notebooks. They're not there as some sort of a guide for taking notes and writing. Someone came up with a potential solution that was supposed to protect the written work from, well, rats. They used to be pretty common residents in people's homes. They are known for their diet, including basically anything, like paper, for example. So, people started adding wide margins as an appetizer that was supposed to keep rats full. This way, they wouldn't want to get to the main dish, the written pages. Suits have a buttonhole close to the top of the lapel. Manufacturers sew it shut so you can't open it without ruining your suit. And when you compare it to the other lapel, you see that one is completely smooth, without any clues. You won't find such an unpartnered buttonhole on a suit jacket only. Camp shirts, pea coats, and some other clothing pieces have them too. And they have to do with the history of lapels. The earliest ones showed up at the beginning of the 19th century. Before this, men mostly wear frocks with high collars. They would button them all the way up to the top. During hot days, they would relax the button stance, turn down the collars, and leave the top button undone. It was a relief from the swelter. Plus, their folded over laps would be symmetrical at the chest, and today, we recognize that as a lapel. People stopped using that buttonhole after they came up with the lapel, unless it was for some formal occasion. Like, for example, when you wanted to put a flower in there. That's why suit makers left it, as a fashion feature. Tea bags. It's pretty easy to guess what they're for, but they come in handy if you have smelly feet after a long day in your shoes. Just pop tea bags, unused of course, in your shoes during the night. By the time you wake up, tea bags are going to effectively absorb all the unwanted odors. Binder clips can also have a helpful purpose besides their main one. You can clip your money to keep it together. Same is true for paper clips. If your favorite bracelet broke and you're looking for a way to hold it on, a paper clip might help. Just hook one through each end of the bracelet, twist it tightly, and your bracelet is good to go.
How can spiders survive when they lose a leg? When they're in a dangerous situation and try to run away, they can lose legs and regrow them only a couple months later. They'll survive without any problem because most of the time, their legs come off at break points. Those are joints that contain muscles and constrict, which helps spiders minimize blood loss. If they lose a leg at the part that comes before the break point, the spider still sheds it, but it will lose more blood. It will be harder for the animal to recover in this case. Speaking of spiders, have you noticed how they sometimes stay extremely still for a long time? They're motionless while waiting for potential prey to land in their web. When moving around, they waste energy and drive unnecessary attention to themselves. Either a hungry bird praying for a quick snack will see it, or a spider will remain hungry because flies will be less likely to come near their web. When spinning a web, they waste a lot of energy. Even after the web is finished, a spider may have to wait for days or weeks to catch something. So, it's important to save as much energy as possible. Hunting spiders are way more active, but the majority of them are nocturnal predators. They spend their days relaxing, tucked away under a rock or in a nest. Roast potatoes can stay hot for a really long time, and this mostly has to do with the fatty, starchy crust that's like some sort of an insulating layer. When you pre-boil a potato, this causes its starch granules to absorb water and swell until carb molecules seep out to produce this type of thick gel. Since potatoes are in the oven, high temperatures drive off moisture. This makes the gelatinized starch on the outside of the potato chunk and creates a crispy crust. This crust traps the heat inside. The fat from the baking tray collects in cracks too, and the heat-keeping structure stays strong. Birds don't get electrocuted while perching on power lines because it's not voltages that will harm them, but voltage differences, and electricity wouldn't flow without them. So, if you see a bird standing on a single power line at, for example, 35,000 volts, the lack of a voltage difference is something that keeps the animal safe. But if it accidentally extends its wings and touches another power line that's at a different voltage, it won't end well. That's the reason why electricity companies make sure there's plenty of space between the cables. Have you ever wondered why airplane pilots won't try to land on grass when the landing gear doesn't deploy? The grass may seem like a good solution at first because it's soft, true. But the surface will neither be smooth nor even. When pressure is high, landing on grass can lead to unpredictable movements and cause issues such as structure formation. That happens because of bouncing and unequal pressure. This can even result in fuel leakage and prevent the doors from opening. Bald heads tend to be shiny, even though the skin elsewhere on the human body isn't. Most of our skin is covered with tiny hairs that give it some sort of velvety peach fuzz look. With male pattern baldness, the hair follicles tend to shrink and turn into skin cells, which means there's no hair there at all. And the scalp is especially shiny due to the sebaceous glands. They produce and secrete some kind of oily matter that protects our skin. Sebaceous glands are located all across our skin, but the scalp has way more of them. So, this oil coats the skin, which is why it turns into a more reflective surface. House cats will rarely meow at one another, but they become chatty with humans, and this could be related to domestication. The process of taming cats and keeping them as pets started nearly 10,000 years ago. Before that, cats were pretty much loners. They rarely encountered other cats, so they didn't even have to use their voices to communicate with each other. Instead, they communicated through their sense of smell, which included things like rubbing against a certain object, for example, a tree. So they didn't even have to come face to face with other members of their species to send a message. And that's how they mostly communicate today as well. But humans don't have such a good sense of smell as cats, so these foxy creatures had to think of a way to send us a message and still get what they wanted from us, which turned out to be meowing. If you're planning a day trip to a desert, for example, the Sahara in North Africa, you're going to want to bring good sunscreen, and a lot of water, of course, but also a snug sleeping bag if you're planning to spend the night there too. Deserts really become cold during the night. In the Sahara, temperatures go from an average high of 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to 25 degrees during the night. Such dramatic change happens because of two main factors: humidity and sand. Sand doesn't retain heat that well. When light and heat from the sun reach a desert, sand grains from the top layer absorb heat. But they release it back into the air relatively quickly. So during the day, the sand radiates the energy coming from the sun, which eventually heats the air and leads to extremely high temperatures. And during the night, the sand is quickly losing heat once again. But this time, there's no sunlight that would reheat the desert. That leaves the sand colder than before and leads to such low temperatures. In arid deserts such as the Atacama Desert in Chile and the Sahara, the humidity is extremely low. That means the amount of water vapor in the air is almost zero. Unlike sand, water does well to store heat. Water vapor in the air traps heat close to the ground. It's like you cover the ground with a huge blanket. That way, you stop it from dissipating into the atmosphere. Also, when the air has a high level of humidity, it requires more energy to heat up. That means it takes more time for that same energy to disappear and for the surroundings to get colder. Since there's almost no humidity in deserts, such areas can both quickly heat up and cool down. If you microwave water for tea, it will taste worse than when it's made with a kettle. That's because the temperature of the liquid is the main factor for a good tea. Water should reach a rolling boil before you pour it over tea leaves, whether they're loose or bagged. It's an easy thing to do with tea kettles, both the electric and stovetop varieties. When the burner or the electric heating element is on, the water at the bottom of the vessel warms up. As it's getting hotter, water through the rest of the kettle comes to the boiling point. A microwave doesn't heat from the bottom up. It creates electromagnetic waves that randomly jump around the box. You probably notice when you try to reheat leftovers. They end up partially frozen in some spots and extremely hot in others. The same will happen with water because it's hard to control microwave energy. Overheated liquid won't be good for tea either. When water goes above 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the boiling point for water, it can destroy the compounds that give a tea its specific flavor. Have you ever wondered why those electrical plugs most Americans use have holes in the prongs? The story dates back to the early 20th century when Harvey Hubble Jr. invented different types of electrical plugs. He started with the detachable electric plug, which was the first ever of that type. Some of his designs had prongs with indents. those aligned with tiny bumps inside the electrical sockets. Such an indent and bump system secured the prongs in place after people would insert a plug into a socket. At some point, these indents gave way to holes, which worked in the same way. But that's just part of the story. Most of the modern outlets don't even have bumps anymore. They keep plugs from falling out of the wall by using friction and pressure. Today, some manufacturers insert a rod through all the holes in a line of prongs. That's how they lock them in place while encasing them in plastic. Some also say the holes save metal, which cuts costs of manufacturing in the long term.
The Empire State Building's tower was designed to serve as a docking station for dirigibles. At that time, people believed that these airships would become the main means of transportation in the future. The project included gangplanks, check-in and customs offices, and so on. But then the engineers realized that the wind up there was too strong for their plans, and they gave up on their idea. Angel Falls, the largest uninterrupted waterfall on the planet, is more than twice as tall as the Empire State Building. During the dry season, the falling water sometimes evaporates before it reaches the ground. One of the most mysterious sounds ever heard on Earth was the bloop. It occurred in 1997 and resembled the noise of marine animals, but the volume was too great for a sound produced by a living creature. The bloop continued for 1 minute. It started from a low rumble and then rose in frequency. Antarctica might just look like a giant field of ice, but there's actually a huge continent underneath. That means that it has volcanoes, mountains, and valleys, like any other continent. Scientists have recently discovered that the Antarctic landmass has the lowest point on the planet, as well as huge mountain ranges. If any of the numerous volcanoes were to erupt, it would melt a huge part of the surface ice and increase the spill of ice into the ocean. The sea level would rise and flood coastal areas around the world. The ocean waters would also be disrupted, putting marine life at risk, though all of these volcanoes are dormant at the moment. Each day on the South Pole lasts 6 months on this continent. The South Pole only has a single sunset and sunrise across an entire year. Early Earth might have been purple, not green. There's a theory that ancient microbes used molecules rather than chlorophyll to absorb sunlight. These molecules likely gave living organisms a violet tint. During the Stone Age, the entire population of Central Europe was around 1,500 people, which means they would all fit on a mid-sized cruise liner these days. Astronomers have figured out that the Milky Way weighs around 1.5 trillion solar masses, and one solar mass is the mass of our Sun. A tiny part of this weight is a supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, and 200 billion stars. The rest is dark matter, mysterious and invisible. If all sheets of Arctic ice and glaciers melted at the same time, the sea level would rise for the height of a 26-story building. Under black or UV light, ripening bananas look bright blue. That's because of the chlorophyll that's breaking down when the fruit is ripening. Because of tectonic plate movements, the Pacific Ocean shrinks every year, and the Atlantic Ocean gets bigger by the same amount. These days, there are only 2 ice sheets in the world left after the planet's last ice age. The first is the Greenland ice sheet. The second, the Antarctic ice sheet, is enormous. It's the size of Mexico and the continental US combined. Tsunami waves often go unnoticed. They don't rise for more than several inches above the surface until they reach shallow waters. When the ocean is deep, though, they can travel as fast as a long-distance passenger airplane. Corals that live in shallow waters produce their own protection from the sun. Without it, sunlight would harm the algae living inside them. To protect these algae, which are the main source of food for the corals, they fluoresce. This process makes proteins that act as sunscreen. Almost 90% of the volcanic activity on Earth happens in the oceans. The South Pacific has the largest concentration of volcanoes people know about. There's one volcano cluster that has 1,133 volcanic cones. All of them are active and cooped up in an area the size of New York State. The Zemchug Canyon in the middle of the Bering Sea is the largest underwater canyon ever discovered. There are more treasures and artifacts at the bottom of the ocean than in all museums in the world combined. In 1900, one of the biggest hurricanes struck near Central America and in the Gulf of Mexico. It then went as far as Florida and Texas and is considered to be the most devastating hurricane in the United States history. They first detected it on August 27th, and it lasted for many days. By the time it reached the Texas coast, the storm had turned into a Category 4 hurricane. Hurricanes are categorized on wind speed and intensity using something called a Saffir-Simpson scale. There are 5 different categories from 1 to 5, with 1 being the weakest and 5 being the strongest. The people of Galveston had less than 4 days to prepare for the arriving storm that even stretched out to Oklahoma and Kansas. The Great Hurricane then made its way to the Great Plains and turned towards the Great Lakes, New England, and reached southeastern Canada. The storm was so bad that more than 3,600 homes were damaged, even though they were sturdy enough to withstand the storm. Given the population numbers back then, it was equivalent to hundreds of thousands of houses destroyed, if not millions. Spotted Lake, Canada. They call it the most magical spot in Canada. In winter and spring, this is just a regular lake that looks like any other, but try going there in the summer when the water starts to evaporate. It'll feel as if you've entered a different world, a polka-dotted landscape with blue, green, and yellow spots. Over the summer, there are over 300 pools there, and they all look magical. Over the centuries, people believed each of them had different healing properties. Oh, and the explanation for the vibrant colors is pure science. Each of them has a high concentration of different minerals. We live inside the sun. Its atmosphere stretches far beyond its visible surface, and even though Earth is 93 million miles away from the star, it's still within reach of the sun's atmosphere. Auroras happen when charged particles from the sun get caught by Earth's magnetic field and crash into the upper atmosphere near the poles. Our planet is gradually slowing down the speed of its rotation. It happens at an unhurried pace of 17 milliseconds per 100 years. Because of this, our days are becoming longer, and still, only after 140 million years, a day on Earth will last 25 hours. Earth's southernmost continent, Antarctica, is only the 5th largest one, but it contains almost 70% of the planet's fresh water and 90% of the world's ice. Antarctica is also considered to be a desert. Lots of rocks on Earth have a Martian origin. Scientists analyze the chemical content of some meteorites found in the Sahara Desert, Antarctica, and other places. It turned out that these rocks had arrived from the Red Planet. The largest sandcastle in the world is located in Denmark. 30 sand sculptors who created it used more than 5,000 tons of sand. To make it more durable, they added 10% of clay, together with a layer of glue. They built it to stand tall against long and stormy winters. Some photons that don't get absorbed are re-emitted, and their wavelength determines the color we see. When you expose a material to sunlight or photons of higher energy, it can damage its chromophores, which is why they won't be able to emit photons at certain wavelengths. Red materials fade in sunlight the most. Their chromophores emit red light in a way they mop up photons of the rest of the wavelengths. From 60 to 100 tons of space dust drift down to our planet's surface every day. These tiny cosmic particles are mostly released by comets, which are usually made of dust and ice. When the sun turns this ice into vapor, the remaining dust travels down to Earth.
The tuatara is a reptile that has a third eye on top of its head. The eye has a retina, nerve connections, and a lens, but isn't used for seeing, as during growth it quickly becomes covered by scales. Scientists are still trying to find the eye's mysterious function. There's only one letter that doesn't appear in the name of any of the 50 U.S. states. There's a Z in Arizona, and even 2 pesky X's in New Mexico and Texas. But search a map and you won't find a single Q in any U.S. state name. It's estimated that a total of 108 billion people have lived on Earth throughout its history. Ever wondered what that tiny pocket in your jeans is for? It's a watch pocket and was originally intended as a place to store pocket watches. It dates back to 1879 as a new feature on a pair of Levi's jeans. Over 3 billion pounds of potatoes are used to make McDonald's fries every year, which is around 15% of all the potatoes grown in America in 2020. Unlike humans, cats don't have the same amount of toes on their front and back paws. They usually have 5 toes on their front paws, but only 4 on their back ones. If you've got a feline companion, go take a look. The entire population of Earth could fit inside Los Angeles. With the world's population being 7.5 billion, this seems crazy. But if everyone stood shoulder to shoulder, we could all fit inside 500 square miles. Pigs aren't the only animals that are great at finding truffles. Dogs are just as good thanks to their sense of smell and are now used more commonly. The current American flag was designed by a high school student. Bob Heff designed the flag for his history class in 1958 and was only given a B- for his efforts. Later, his design was chosen out of more than 1,500 others to become the new flag. His grade was unsurprisingly changed to an A after this. The pandas in your local zoo may look at home, but unless you're in China, they're just on vacation. That's because technically all pandas are on loan from China and are the property of that country. The sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," uses every letter in the English language. In 1974, a full NASA spacesuit cost between $15 and $22 million. But over time, NASA hasn't replaced worn-out suits, leading to them only having 4 working EVA suits left. But have no fear, since 2009, NASA has been working to upgrade their outside-the-spaceship wardrobe with an investment of $200 million. Does that come with sequins? Hot water actually may freeze faster than cold water. This is because the cooled water at the bottom is denser than the hot water at the top, and this uneven temperature distribution speeds up the cooling process. In a 12-hour period, it's likely that an ant will only take 8 minutes of rest. They're really switching up the definition of a power nap. Camels have 3 sets of eyelids and 2 rows of eyelashes to protect them from the blowing sands of the desert. The letter X was first used to represent a kiss all the way back in 1763. It was first used in a letter written by British naturalist Gilbert White. No one actually knows if we're spelling William Shakespeare correctly, and it looks like the man himself wasn't too sure either. He signed his name in a number of ways. But it turned out he never signed anything as William Shakespeare, despite it being the accepted spelling today. The word swims still looks the same even when turned upside down, like that. A tiny percentage of the static that you see on old TV screens is residual radiation left over from the Big Bang. If you were to lift up the tail of a kangaroo, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, the animal would no longer be able to hop. Kangaroos use their tails as a third leg to propel them forward and also to keep balance. So basically, they'd fall over. If you're heading to London to see the famous London Bridge, think again, as the original bridge is now in Arizona. By the 1960s, London Bridge was falling down. Really? And so the city decided to sell it to an American oil tycoon, Robert P. McCullough. It was disassembled, each piece labeled, shipped over to the U.S., and reassembled. It can now be found in Lake Havasu City. Movie trailers, those teasers of upcoming movies shown before the main feature, were originally shown after the movie, which is why they're called trailers. Oh. You don't have to worry about a crocodile mocking you, as they can't actually stick out their tongues. Crocs have a membrane in their mouth which prevents the tongue from moving. English is the most widely spoken language in the world, but 4 times more people speak it as a second language than as their mother tongue. Speaking of England, the crown jewels contain 2 of the largest cut diamonds of all time. The Cullinan diamond is the largest diamond ever found and is part of the sovereign's scepter with cross. The second gem is the aptly named Cullinan II, which is mounted in the impressive imperial state crown. So now you know. Every glass of water you drink probably contains water molecules that have also been drunk by a dinosaur. The dinosaurs were around for 186 million years, compared to humanity's 200,000, giving them a lot more time to drink Earth's water than us. Huge diamonds could be raining down on Jupiter and Saturn as you watch this video. That's because lightning storms turn methane into carbon, which gradually hardens as it falls and turns into diamonds. Beneath the Easter Island heads, they actually have hidden bodies. In the 1900s, archaeologists dug up 2 of the statues to find full torsos measuring 30 feet. The torso was 30 feet long, not that the statue had 30 feet. That would be weird. Next time you're struggling to concentrate when studying, try reaching for a stick of gum. A study found that participants who chewed gum while taking a memory test could stay focused longer than those who didn't. Now, common sense would suggest that trees have been around before most animals, as they produce oxygen for us to breathe. If you were to tell this to a shark, it would laugh, as the sea creatures were actually around long before trees. Sharks date back around 400 million years, with trees coming in about 50 million years later. Yeah, I want to see a shark laugh. Listen closely next time you turn on the hot and cold water taps, as water actually makes different pouring sounds depending on its temperature. The heat changes the thickness of the water, which changes the pitch of the sound it makes when it's poured. There may be a new suspect to add to police lineups, and that suspect is a koala bear. While gorillas and chimps have fingerprints similar to humans, so does the cuddly koala. The Comic Sans font has divided people across the world for decades, and has developed a reputation for being informal or unprofessional. This makes perfect sense given its creation, as designer Vincent Conner looked to his favorite comic books like Watchmen for inspiration. Think of the first thing that comes to your head when Transylvania is brought up. It's vampires, right? But Dracula's author Bram Stoker never actually visited the mountainous region of Romania, which cemented Transylvania in the legend of the vampire forever. The first college football game took place as far back as 1869 and was between Rutgers and Princeton. Rutgers won the game 6-4. If you're looking for a bodyguard from the animal kingdom, look no further. The silverback gorilla can lift up to 10 times its own body weight, which translates to a total of around 1,800 pounds. This makes them one of the strongest living mammals on Earth. Ever wondered how a city gets named? In Portland, it came down to a coin flip. If the coin had landed the other way around, we'd be calling it Boston, Oregon. Iceland is growing 2 inches every year. This is because it's divided by the North American and European tectonic plates. So as the plates push wider apart, the bigger Iceland gets. The average person will spend a whopping 6 months of their life waiting for red traffic lights to turn green. Poor yellow isn't even mentioned. Humans are the only animals with chins. While other animals, like the chimpanzee, share similarities with humans, like walking on 2 legs or having a jaw, none actually have that little bit of bone in the middle of the lower jaw. So hey, when you're feeling down, chin up. Okay, now don't get freaked out, but our brains can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. My brain, even less. Now, don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. A mere byte is 8 bits. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some info, but sooner or later you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from the list. Cats can't taste sugar, as they don't need to because of their meat-based diet. They are some of the few animals on the planet that can't taste sweet things. Speaking of which, you might not believe it, but in this picture, you can see an entire million different colors, which, when seen in full size, it has 1 million pixels, and each of them is a different color. Although you probably wouldn't be able to name each of them, your eye surely recognizes the differences when seen up close. Nah, go ahead and name each of them. I'll wait. And time's up. Cockroaches are tough. They can survive harsh conditions and have been around ever since dinosaurs ruled our planet. But the termite queen beats all that with a lifespan of 50 years. That's the longest any insect can live. Regular termites live only 1 to 2 years. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms and legs, they're in your head. Masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Moving away from humans, fleas can jump up to 130 times their body height. To put that in perspective, it's around the same as an average human being jumping over the Empire State Building. Dogs are capable of dreaming, and if you have a dog, it's likely dreaming of you. Research suggests that dogs, like humans, draw on their everyday experiences when they dream. There are watermelons the size of a grape. Cucamelons, or if you prefer mouse melons, actually look like really small watermelons, but at the same time have a citrus flavor. Mantis shrimp is one of the most colorful creatures in the world. They look rainbow-colored to us, but to those of their own species, they look like a whole burst of colors. Their eyes can detect billions more shades than ours. In Tibet, there are black diamond apples that aren't green or red, but dark purple. The place where they grow has plenty of ultraviolet light over the day, while the temperatures drastically go down during the night, which makes the apple skin get a darker color. Now, when hippos get hot, they ooze a pinkish liquid through their skin. It soon covers their bodies and protects them from sunburns. Yep, hippos come with their own sunscreen. Chickens are the closest living descendants of the T-Rex. Really? Scientists compared the 68 million-year-old T-Rex DNA with that of 21 modern species and found chickens to be the closest match. Sloths are able to hold their breath longer than dolphins. They slow their heart rates, and they can stay that way for almost 40 minutes. Dolphins have to come to the surface to catch some air every 10 minutes. The starfish doesn't have either brain or heart, and neither does it have lungs. Yet it has hundreds of tiny feet, allowing it to walk, and it also pumps water through them through the star's body. The water acts like blood for the creature. Honeybees have 2 stomachs. One stomach is for eating, while the other is dedicated to storing the nectar they collect from flowers so that they can carry it back to their hive. Dolphins always sleep with one eye open and never fully asleep. This is because their breathing isn't automatic, as they need to keep visiting the surface of the water for air. If they slept, they'd just drown. Humans are the only animals whose brain goes smaller. Yup, as we get older, it tends to shrink. It can do so even because of isolation and loneliness. Other animals, even some of our distant cousins from another side of the family tree, like monkeys and chimpanzees, have no problem with that. You can taste garlic with your feet. Mamma mia! Rub a clove right in your feet, take your socks off beforehand, and wait for it. The chemical responsible for its unique smell can be absorbed through the skin, even though the clove was never in your mouth. Weird, huh? The alpine ibex is the absolute climbing champion of the animal world. Mother goats with their kids seem to be defying gravity by scaling flat vertical cliff walls where no other creature can walk. Male goats, on the other hand, prefer flatlands themselves. Our lifespan is programmed with our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means if we find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Or as long as your money holds out. Reindeer's eyes change color depending on the season. In summer, when the days are longer and lighter, they're brown. But in winter, when it's darker and days are shorter, their eyes turn blue. The blue hue helps them to see in the dark and prevents pressure from building up within the eye. It's caused by the pupils being dilated for so long in the dark winter months. Roosters stop themselves from going deaf when they crow by tilting their heads back. This covers their ear canal and basically acts as a built-in earplug. Their crows produce around as much sound as running a chainsaw. Oy. The Earth's surface is not evenly shaped, which means mass is uneven too. That way, gravity is not the same in all spots on Earth. There's a mysterious anomaly in the Hudson Bay of Canada. The gravity there is lower than in other regions surrounding this area, and scientists believe it's because of melted glaciers. During the last ice age, that region was covered in ice, which is now long gone and melted. But the planet hasn't completely recovered from the icy burden. Gravity over any area is proportional to its mass. The glacier left an imprint that pushed aside a part of the planet's mass, which is one of the reasons why the gravity is weaker in that area. The strongest earthquake we've ever had was in Chile, a magnitude 9.5. If an earthquake ever reached magnitude 12, it could split our planet in half. So let's not do that, please. When sharks need their morning joe, they go to a cafe too. Back in 2002, researchers found an area in the Pacific Ocean called the White Shark Cafe, where great white sharks come during the winter. They simply hang out, tell jokes, and laugh at stories about how many humans they've scared, and then go back to the coast to scare us a little bit more when the weather gets warmer. Octopuses have 3 hearts, 2 of which pump blood to the gills, and the third one rolls it to the other organs. Their blood is blue, by the way, and they also have as many as 9 brains. 1 is central, and 8 are, you guessed it, controlling their 8 limbs. Perhaps this is where the expression "thinking on your feet" comes from. Orcas are some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. They hear each other's calls over dozens of miles and have unique calls for every single one of their pod. These calls are similar to human names in function. Well, that's all I have for now. Bye. Oceans cover 70% of the Earth. On average, the ocean is 8 Empire State Buildings deep, and less than 5% of its mysterious depths have been explored. It's even possible to find lakes and rivers beneath the ocean. They're denser than the rest of the water surrounding them, so you can clearly see the difference. When the coral is in shallow waters, intense sunlight can damage the algae living inside it. To protect the algae, the coral produces some proteins that act as some kind of sunscreen for it, so they really don't need to spend money on it. Okay, most of the ocean may not be explored, but what we do know is about 20 million tons of gold is dispersed through its dark waters. It's concentrated in really small amounts, which is why it doesn't pay off to mine it. If we could take it out, every person on the planet would get 9 pounds of gold. When sharks need their morning joe, they go to a cafe too. Back in 2002, researchers found an area in the Pacific Ocean called the White Shark Cafe, where great white sharks come during the winter. They simply hang out, tell jokes, and laugh at stories of how many humans they've scared, and then go back to the coast to scare us a little bit more when the weather gets warmer. Hey, have you had a great white latte? Try one. The widest point of the Pacific Ocean goes from Indonesia to Colombia, and at that part it's 12,300 miles across, over 5 times wider than the diameter of the moon. We might imagine oceans are cold, especially in depths where the temperature is only 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But there's an exception. Water that comes out of hydrothermal vents in the seafloor has a temperature of up to 750 degrees. Humans are the only animals whose brain gets smaller. Yup, as we get older, it tends to shrink. It can do so even because of isolation and loneliness. Other animals, even some of our distant cousins from another side of the family tree, like monkeys and chimpanzees, have no problem with that. I'm guessing television is the probable cause. Our eardrums have nothing to do with the sense of sight, but they still move when we move our eyes. In the average lifetime, our heart beats over 2.5 billion times. I've counted. Our nose can detect over 1 trillion smells, and our lips are hundreds of times more sensitive than the tips of our fingers. 2 of our body parts never stop growing: your nose and your ears. Cockroaches are tough. They can survive harsh conditions and have been around since dinosaurs ruled our planet. But the termite queen beats all that, with a lifespan of 50 years. That's the longest any insect can live. Regular termites live only 1 to 2 years. It's not the water camels store in their humps, but fat. They store water in their bloodstream. These can fly really high, more than 29,500 feet, which is even higher than Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on our planet. Sloths are able to hold their breath longer than dolphins. Yup, they slow their heart rates, and they can stay that way for almost 40 minutes. Dolphins have to come to the surface to catch some air every 10 minutes. The moon has volcanoes, and scientists believe these might have been active around 100 million years ago, when dinosaurs still ruled our planet. Wow, the view must have been magnificent. There are watermelons the size of a grape. Cucamelons, if you prefer, mouse melons, actually look like really small watermelons, but at the same time have a citrus flavor. Not just mouse melons, there's also the kangaroo mouse. This animal doesn't feel the need to drink water. It lives in the Nevada desert, and since its habitat is really dry, it simply learned to quench its thirst through seeds it likes to eat. You may think parking is expensive in the area where you live, but it's probably cheaper than a spot you'd pay in Hong Kong. Just a 135 square foot spot placed in front of the center, which is the 5th tallest building in the city, was purchased for almost $1 million. I'll take a bus ticket, please. Speaking of expensive, and I was, the world's priciest hot dog is $169, and you can try it out in Seattle, Washington. I don't have the money, but I am a little intrigued, must admit. An Australian barista set a world record for the most cappuccinos made in 1 hour. 420 of them. That's really a Java jive. You can taste garlic with your feet. Rub a clove right in your feet, of course take the socks off beforehand, and wait for it. The chemical responsible for its unique smell can be absorbed through the skin even though the clove was never in your mouth. By the way, lobsters can try out the same experiment. Well, they actually taste any food with their feet. Okay, researchers have found many things that are evidence of prehistoric animals or our human ancestors that lived thousands of years ago, like bones, teeth, stone tools, and a piece of chewing gum, dating from almost 10,000 years ago. In Tibet, there are black diamond apples that aren't green or red, but dark purple. The place where they grow has plenty of ultraviolet light over the day, while the temperatures drastically go down during the night, which makes the apple skin get a darker color. Australia has a lake of naturally bubblegum pink color. The unusual color is there because of the pigment from a certain type of algae living there. Clouds look so fluffy, like they're made of giant puffs of cotton, but the average one weighs around 1.1 million pounds, so please stay up there. A farmer from Iowa got hiccups that didn't stop for the next 68 years. First, hiccuping was about 40 times a minute, and after a while, 20 times. He actually spent 70% of his life hiccuping. 1 million seconds is somewhere around 12 days, and 1 billion seconds is almost 32 years. Nothing unusual here, just a little bit of good old math that reminds us how cool the time is. Okay, sharks may be scarier than humans, but our teeth are just as strong as theirs, just smaller. Until the beginning of the 19th century, Americans actually thought tomatoes were poisonous. So many tasty meals they missed believing that. Yup, farmers discovered not just people have regional accents, but cows also have different moos, according to the area where they live. Hey, do cows get moody? Giraffes have a tongue that's up to 20 inches long. Ooh, ice cream maybe? Actually, they can bend trees with their tongues. There's a specific type of jellyfish that's actually immortal. Hey, I can see that as a logo for a life insurance company. The Earth is orbiting the Sun, but not at a fixed speed rate. We don't sense it, but it's slowing as time goes by, so our day will become 25 hours long in about 175 million years. So don't plan that extra hour in your schedule just yet. Space is huge, duh. But there's obviously lots of empty spots since there are more trees, 3 trillion, on our planet than stars in the Milky Way, only about 300 to 400 billion. Wow. When someone mentions the biggest desert, you probably picture the endless sandy surface of the Sahara, burning under the hot sun. Well, not quite. The biggest desert is the Antarctic Polar Desert, which covers over 5.5 million square miles in Buffalo. Nah, Antarctica. Sounds strange at first, but the definition says a desert is a place that gets less than 10 inches of precipitation annually. Still, it doesn't say if it has to be hot. Ostriches don't actually hide their heads in the sand. When they sense danger, they lower down their head, neck, and body to the ground, which makes them a little bit less visible to predators. Their light-colored neck blends in with the sand, so it only looks like their head is hidden down there. The first commercial passenger flight happened at the beginning of the 20th century. It was a 23-minute flight that cost $400, which is about $8,500 today, and the plane flew between two cities in Florida. A famous Egyptian ruler, Cleopatra, lived closer to cell phones than to the time when the Great Pyramids of Egypt were completed. Well, that's a gap. Speaking of cell phones, every 2 minutes there are more photos taken than in the entire 19th century. Okay, let's add one more to those statistics. Cheese! So, you just sat down to eat at your favorite restaurant. The waiter comes by the table to get your order of drinks. You've been craving some soda all day, so you order a Coke. The waiter looks really sorry, but he says, "It's a Pepsi restaurant." Can you count the number of times this has happened to you? Even when you're traveling abroad, it's either Coke or Pepsi. If you like both, you end up having to pick sides. So, how about we get to the bottom of this rivalry? Is one of them objectively better than the other? The first category, variety. I'd say both companies are pretty good at this. You can easily choose between diet, no sugar, and even cherry Coke. While with Pepsi, you can even order such wild tastes as lemon, lime, caramel, and even some spicy flavors. The next category is taste. As you probably know, taste is something very personal. There's no right or wrong answer here, of course, but everyone has their favorite. The Coca-Cola recipe has been an intensely guarded secret since 1891, when John Pemberton, the inventor of the drink, sold the recipe. It was then modified by the buyer, Asa Candler, and that's exactly the recipe we know and love today. Meanwhile, Pepsi's sweet taste was invented by Caleb Bradham. Sometime later, Charles Guth purchased Bradham's bankrupt company. This guy also owned a candy company named Loft. Can it explain why Pepsi's recipe is sweeter than Coke's? What do your taste buds say? Coke or Pepsi? Now, you've just woken up. You ordered pizza the night before and are ready to have some leftovers for breakfast. You open the fridge and, you're faced with a tough choice: cold pizza or cold pasta. How and why do both of these dishes taste so good when cold? There's actually science behind their amazing taste. According to pasta experts, your spaghetti tastes even better the next day because of that little thing called starch. It's mainly found in cereals and potatoes. To put it simply, the ingredients of these dishes have more time to get to know each other better as they spend the night sitting in the fridge. The starch absorbs the fat and sauce and seasoning overnight. It vacuums all the tastiness and makes the flavor much richer. This goes for both pizza and pasta. I guess it's not coincidence, then, that some people often over-order these types of food just so they can have some leftovers to appreciate the next morning. No, we never do that at my house. Still on the topic of pizza, I say let's settle the pineapple on pizza debate once and for all. It's true that this is the line that separates many of us. One side of the argument says berries should never go on pizza. Wait, what? In case you didn't know, pineapples are actually berries. A group of berries that have fused together, that is. Now, on the other side, there are Hawaiian pizza lovers. These ones will try to convince you how great pineapple is when mixed together with tomato sauce. It's supposed to add sweetness and freshness to counterbalance the spice of the tomato sauce. So, what do you have to say about that? Yay or nay? Oh, and have you ever tried pineapples on burgers? Yep, they have Concord burgers as well. Some fans say pineapple plays the same role as pickles. It provides that sweet, salty, and tangy flavor that your burger experience is in dire need of. Now, no twin is exactly the same, except when it comes to Twix bars. If you're the one to pick sides, then I guess you've already picked yours. Now, tell me, are you the left Twix or the right Twix fan? Does it make any difference? Or is it all just a genius marketing move? If you've bought Twix over the last years, you've probably been faced with three options: a regular package, a package that is said to contain 2 left Twix bars, and another one that contains 2 right Twix bars. Now, as you may know, Twix comes in pairs. But in 2012, Twix's manufacturer Mars took this to the next level. They began to claim that the bars were not identical twins. Through very humorous commercials, Mars gives the consumer the idea that the production process for each bar is different. The story is that the Twix inventors, brothers Earl and Seamus, once reached a breaking point, quite literally. They disagreed on chocolate pouring techniques and caramel consistency, so each brother went on to found his own company. For example, in the left Twix company, the crunchy cookie base is cascaded in caramel and bathed in chocolate, while in the right Twix company, the crisp cookie and creamy caramel base are cloaked in chocolate. Now, if you ask me, this sounds like a bunch of synonyms thrown together. Hey, I like synonyms, especially on my oatmeal. Anyway, some excited fans have even gone as far as to fact-check if there are any real differences between the left and right Twix bars. It turns out that the left Twix was just a little bit crunchier. And in case you're wondering how that was tested, let's just say it involved a digital decibel meter. The bars on the left average 72.3 decibels in crunchiness, while the bars on the right average 69.6 decibels. So does that mean louder tastes better? You tell me. Fans think it might be due to the packaging or storage of Twix chocolate bars. They suggest it's less about left versus right and more about top versus bottom placement. The Twix that ends up at the bottom of the package during the production process might be less crunchy. Oy. Now, I'm sure every country probably has some other dilemma, but here in the US, I'd say the main one is the peanut butter over or under the jelly debate. If you've ever been young, raise your hand if you were ever in that demographic, then you must have developed a preference. While some responsible grown-up was packing your lunchbox, what did you scream, jelly first or peanut butter first? People around here have strong opinions on how to make the perfect PB&J sandwich. Some say that the peanut butter lays the perfect foundation for your favorite jelly, while others say that jelly goes first since it's thinner and spreads more easily. Well, the question remains, what side are you on? If you had to pick, would you say you are a taco or falafel person? You might be thinking, are these even comparable? And I'll say, oh yeah, they're both great but serve completely different purposes. Some definitions here. Taco, a Mexican dish made up of a fried tortilla, folded and filled with chili beans, lettuce, and your choice of meat. Falafel, a Middle Eastern dish that is basically patties of ground chickpeas or fava beans, seasoned to perfection, stuffed into pita bread with lots of different sauce toppings. Well, I'm not sure I made my point here, or have I? If this has made your mouth water or encouraged you to run down the street to buy one dish or the other, then I guess I've succeeded. Oh, and in case you don't know which one to choose, just go for a taco falafel. These do exist. And I guess they probably taste great, too. Have you ever stopped mid-sip and wondered, is coffee a soup? Apparently, some people are convinced that coffee is not a beverage, but rather a soup. Now, what makes them think so? According to some fans of this theory, coffee is actually a broth. That's because coffee beans are finely ground and later brewed in water. This process creates an unthickened liquid, usually recognized as broth. This theory has its deniers, of course. Those say it doesn't resemble broth at all, as broths usually mean that the liquid has some meal-like value and various nutritional factors. And coffee is just coffee. It's supposed to taste nice and give you energy. Even if you order the frou-frou versions like low-fat, no-foam, double-shot grande lattes with 2%, like I get. Hey, what's not to like? Now, tell us in the comments below your choice for each of these food battles. Now, there are things about nature that you know for sure, or don't you? Let's check how much you know about the incredible world we live in. How many of the 14 points will you guess? Let us know. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built when mammoths still roamed the earth. Myth or fact? It's actually a fact. The most famous pyramid in the world had been constructed about 500 years before woolly mammoths went extinct, approximately 4,000 years ago. Their last known habitat was the cold and deserted Wrangel Island in the Arctic Sea, which might not have been as cold then as it is today. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Is it myth or fact? It's a fact. Scientists used to believe there were about 4 billion trees on our planet, but more recent studies have shown that there are over 3 trillion of them, making it 420 trees per person. As for the stars in our galaxy, there are only about 100 billion, which is 30 times fewer than the trees on Earth alone. The trees you see are all individual ones, myth or fact? This is false. In fact, 90% of the trees on Earth are interconnected by mycelium filaments. They send warning signals when in danger and exchange nutrients through them. It's kind of like the underground internet. Also, there are organisms like Pando, for example, which is the largest single living being on the planet. It looks like a dense forest of quaking aspens. In fact, it's basically a single giant tree, with its roots being interconnected underground. We drink the same water dinosaurs used to drink hundreds of millions of years ago. Myth or fact? Actually, it is. Only a small portion of the water on our planet has evaporated for good. The rest of it is constantly renewed. So, mammoths, dinosaurs, and whatever came before them billions of years ago drank and swam in the same water we see today. Not to mention what else they did in the water. Unfortunately, the water doesn't keep information about those ancient creatures for us to find out more about them. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. Are you willing to bet on that? Myth or fact? If you aren't, good for you. Lightning may strike the very same spot as many times as it wants. It might seem random, but the electrical discharge from the sky is pulled toward the tallest objects in the thunderstorm area. Also, the material this object is made of matters too. It's by no chance that lightning rods on buildings are mostly made of copper and aluminum alloys. These metals are some of the most conductive materials, so they pull lightning very efficiently. All deserts are hot. Now, this one's easy, right? Myth or fact? If you guessed it's a myth, then right you are. Deserts are qualified not for their temperature, but for the presence or absence of growth and life in them. The most well-known desert is the Sahara, of course, and it is indeed very hot. The actual largest desert in the world is Antarctica, which is almost twice the size of the Sahara Desert. And you wouldn't call it even lukewarm. It's a polar desert, and there are several others on our planet. For example, Greenland. There's enough gold underground to cover the entire planet in a thick layer. Would you believe that? Well, you should, because it's true. Since 1950, humanity has mined nearly 200,000 tons of gold. If we made a cube out of all this metal, it would be 70 feet high and wide. Recent data from scientists confirm that there are huge reserves of gold in the Earth's core. The metal is enough to cover the whole planet, and people might have gold up to their knees. The problem is, we just can't mine it from there. Hey, I don't mine if you don't. The Moon and Mars are better mapped than the Earth's oceans. Now, this can't be true, can it? Actually, it can. We have a detailed map of the Moon and Mars, although we're still discovering surprises on their surfaces, granted. Still, over 80% of the Earth's oceans are unmapped and unexplored. We can't study the oceans properly because of pressure, cold, and lack of light underneath billions of tons of water. The lava is always red. What other color can it be, right? Myth or fact? Myth. Usually lava is really red or orange because it's basically molten rock from the deep bowels of our planet. But there's one volcano in Indonesia whose lava is blue and luminescent. Only at night though. During the day, it looks normal. No mystery about it, just tons of sulfuric gas. This volcano also has the largest acidic crater lake in the world. The water there is so turquoise, you want to jump in immediately, but you probably guessed you should never do that. The fire on that volcano is also blue, the largest blue fire in the world, rising up to 16 feet high. Ever seen a gas stove burning? Here, the principle is basically the same. You can see a rainbow at night, too. Is it myth or a fact? It's true, and there's even a name for this phenomenon, a moonbow. Also called a lunar rainbow, this event occurs extremely rarely. It's similar to a regular rainbow, except when it appears on a clear moony night after a rain shower. There's a thing called a fire rainbow, myth or fact. You bet! It's a beautiful phenomenon when the clouds in the sky are painted all the colors of the rainbow, looking like a fiery, multicolored cascade. It only occurs when the conditions are right, and those are very specific. It's close to the equator, the weather is clear, there are feather-like clouds in the sky, the sun is higher than 58 degrees above the horizon. Such clouds are made of ice crystals. When the sun's rays hit them, the particles refract the light and create a rainbow. Wow! There are rainbow trees, myth or fact. If I made you doubt this, I'm glad, because this one is not photoshopped. This is the rainbow eucalyptus, and their bark may literally have all the rainbow colors. These eucalyptuses shed their bark at different times each year. Every time the old section goes off, the tree first reveals bright green bark that was hiding underneath, and then it may turn any color. There's a whole set of hues: orange, maroon, blue, even purple. Stones can move on their own. Myth or fact? Well, you'd be right to believe me. There's a desert plain in California where rocks move around of their own will. Once this plain used to be the bottom of a lake, but then it dried out and became an arid wasteland. Sometimes rains fall here, flooding the entire valley. When night comes, the temperature drops and the water is covered with a thin layer of ice. When it gets warmer again, the ice breaks into segments and the wind pushes them around the place. Some of these ice shards take small rocks with them. When the ice melts for good and the water evaporates, the only thing that remains are trails left by the rocks, as if they'd moved on their own. Mud puddles can move around. Myth or fact? In fact, a single mud puddle in the world also travels as it wants, and nobody still knows why. It moves at a pace of about 20 feet per year, and it seems to have started its journey near the San Andreas Fault in California. People have tried to stop its march, but couldn't. So far, this creeping natural disaster isn't showing any signs of stopping on its own either. So, there's your pesky, problematic puddle to ponder.
Our estimated flight time today will be 3 days. Future passengers of the world's longest aircraft, Airlander 10, won't get to their destinations quickly, but they will surely do it in style. Nicknamed the Flying Bum for its unconventional exterior, this plane will feature plush ensuite bedrooms, an onboard altitude bar, and glass flooring with horizon-to-horizon views. Airlander 10 won't even need an airport. It can take off and land from any flat surface, be it land, sand, water, or ice, using pneumatic skids. It will also be friendly to the environment with less emissions and is supposed to become the safest form of air travel. This 300-foot-long engineering marvel is part airship, part helicopter, and part plane. Other aircraft use one of the various methods to maintain flight: buoyancy, vertical thrust, or lift. Blimps, helicopters, and planes mostly rely on buoyancy, vertical thrust, and lift respectively. But our bum plane incorporates all three of these principles. First comes buoyancy. Airlander uses a massive amount of helium, a material less dense than air. It helps aircraft like blimps and zeppelins take off, just like how a helium-filled balloon ascends. And because helium is buoyant on its own, our hero can float effortlessly. Airlander stores its helium in several compartments for safety and also has 4 325 horsepower engines and requires way less power compared to conventional aircraft, like the Boeing 787, which makes it more energy efficient. But this buoyant aircraft is limited in payload, up to 10 tons. Its constructors could make the hull bigger to place more helium in it, but our plane is already the bulkiest in the world, so that would be too much. To help with this, the Airlander 10 is equipped with 2 vertical thrusters, like those on helicopters. They direct the air downwards, lifting the aircraft. And then there's lift, which plays a crucial role in the aerodynamics of flight. To get lift, you need air zipping over and around the wing, creating a force. Even though the Airlander might not have monster engines like a big jetliner, its huge hull gives plenty of space for air to do its thing and help it lift off. This unique hybrid aircraft has run several successful test voyages, so you can consider it a real thing. It will be a customizable transformer, good for passenger travel, cargo transport, extended flight operations, or scientific goals. Some of its configurations will be able to stay in flight for up to 5 days without stopping. It could be really useful for research missions. And the designers plan to build an even bigger Airlander 50 with a capacity of 50 tons of payload. In the early days of aviation, there were no computer simulations to test the design, so there were some pretty crazy plane models built. Italian designer Gianni Caproni wanted to create an aircraft to transport 100 passengers across the Atlantic with comfort and style. His brainchild, Ka-60, had 9 wings arranged in 3 sets of 3. It had 8 engines, all serviced by mechanics in flight. There were panoramic windows along both sides of the long cabin for passengers sitting in 2 wide rows to enjoy the views of the world below. It had a rounded nose, an integral flight deck, and a streamlined seaplane hull. Once the plane was finished, the pilot was doing test runs on Lake Maggiore to balance the hydroplane. Then, there was probably a boat in its path, or the pilot went too fast, and the plane took off when it wasn't supposed to. It broke up. By the time Caproni arrived at the lake, the pilot had been rescued, but trying to pull the wreckage out only made things worse. So, the plane never got to cross the Atlantic. The French engineers went even further and designed a plane with a body modeled after birds and named it Duck. It was supposed to have a steam engine to power a single tractor propeller to the front of its rotund body. The pilot and landing gear were supposed to be attached by cables and frame underneath the body. This weirdly looking aircraft had an official name, but everyone remembered it as the Flying Pancake because of its saucer-like shape. This design was supposed to make it possible to land and take off in tight areas where regular planes can't fit. The prototype was a success with low takeoff and landing speeds, and the disc-shaped design helped generate lift. The engineers received funding for an improved version, but it came with flaws. When they were corrected, there was no longer a need for this quirky plane. German aeronautical engineer Alexander Lippisch came up with the Aerodyne. It looks like the rear part of an airplane after cutting the whole thing in half, but it could fly on its own. It was considered a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, the same group as helicopters. It combined lift and thrust using a single unit and flow channel, like a ducted fan. Flaps at the end of the fan would divert the outflowing air. The first Dornier Aerodyne flight took off in 1972. Even though it was a success, the authorities lost interest in it and shelved the project. The Pregnant Guppy, also known as Frankenplane because it was made of parts of other airplanes, has helped NASA on its way to the moon. Back in the 1960s, they had a problem shipping rockets from the West Coast to Cape Canaveral in Florida. Taking them by water through the Panama Canal took 2 to 3 weeks, and fragile parts came dented and corroded. And that's when John Conroy came up with a solution. His friend had Boeings he had bought but didn't find use for them. Conroy decided to modify the planes by adding a larger cargo bay on top of the fuselage. He didn't receive funding from NASA for his idea, but he never gave up and mortgaged his own house, sold his car, and invested all his savings into his project to prove it would work out. He borrowed the fuel to fly the prototype to Alabama. The plane flew perfectly and impressed everyone. The Super Guppy, as they started calling it, was successfully transporting rocket stages for NASA's Gemini program. Conroy built a total of 25 modifications of his aircraft to fit even larger and heavier equipment. The Edgeley Optica EA-7 might look like a funky, futuristic Dragonfly aircraft, but it was designed in the mid-70s for low and slow surveillance or sightseeing missions. It features a helicopter-like cockpit mounted ahead of a ducted fan motor and an impressive 270-degree field of view. Its large ducted fan was running quietly inside and outside the cockpit. It gained renewed interest in the 21st century for border patrol, wildlife management, and fire spotting missions. But because of lack of funding, there were only 5 out of the 22 built aircraft remaining airworthy worldwide. Have you ever seen a plane with 2 fuselages of differing sizes? The Rutan Model 202 Boomerang stands out as a multi-engine aircraft built this way to minimize the risks of engine failure. Unlike conventional planes, even if one of its engines were to malfunction, the Boomerang remains easily controllable thanks to its innovative design, which effectively manages asymmetric thrust. This design makes the Boomerang faster and more efficient. This plane was never designed for commercial use, but as a private plane for up to 5 people. You can tell that this short Skyvan was built for practical purposes without caring too much about aesthetics, just by looking at it. And that's how this general-purpose aircraft got its nicknames like Flying Shoebox and The Shed. Despite all the mocking, the Skyvan has served well over the years. It's been around since its first flight in the 1960s, still transferring cargo and passengers today. It can seat 19 people and has a van-like large rear door for loading and unloading freight. That's why it's perfect for short-haul flights, activities like skydiving, and much more. The original Superman from comic books didn't fly. He leaped from one tall building to another in a single bound. But animators who were working on a Superman animated series in the 1940s complained that the whole leaping thing would look silly on the screen. That's how Superman got his superpower of taking off into the air. Just 20% of laughter is caused by jokes and funny situations. The rest is people reacting to questions like, "How are you doing?" and regular statements. It helps to form social bonds. People who laugh together get closer. We humans are just one of the world's 8.7 million estimated species. This number includes 611,000 mushroom mold and other fungi species, 298,000 plant species, 7.8 million animal species. You've got the idea. There are 4 main facial expressions: angry, afraid or surprised, happy, and sad. But besides these basic ones, you can create up to 7,000 more. By the way, facial expressions that are genuine are more likely to be symmetrical. The mountains on Venus are covered with a snow-like substance, but the temperatures on the planets are scorching and no snow can exist there. The frost is actually metallic. An apple is almost 20% air. That's why it floats when placed in the water. Mysterious Pacific sleeper sharks live in an underwater volcano in Kavachi. It's not far from the Solomon Islands. Scientists have to send in robots to learn more about these creatures. People can't stand the heat and acidity of that environment. The University of Oxford is older than the Aztec Empire. The educational institution was established in 1096, and the Aztec Empire was founded 332 years later, in 1428. The tardigrade, aka the water bear, is a microscopic creature that's famous for its survival skills. It can live through extreme temperatures from 300 to negative 458 degrees Fahrenheit, and the pressure that's 6 times stronger than the ocean floor. The creature can also survive in a complete vacuum. Tardigrades sometimes spend almost 10 years without food. Pluto was discovered in 1930 and lost its planetary status in 2006. Within this rather long time, it still didn't manage to make a full orbit around the Sun. The former planet needs 248 Earth years to complete its orbit. In 400 BCE, Persian engineers built an ice machine in the desert. They noticed that ice tended to appear in the shadows during the night. They started to dig holes in the clay in the shaded spots. Then they filled these holes with water. In the morning, they dug the ice out of the holes and stored it in special super insulated constructions filled with hay. This helped the ice last even on the hottest days, and Persians always had something to help them stay cool. Those who cheated in the Olympics in ancient Greece were severely punished. They had to pay fines and could even be banned from any kind of competition. Interestingly, the fines were used to build bronze statues of those cheating athletes near the entrance of the Olympic Stadium with a description of how they had cheated. On average, a drop of water spends around 9 days in the atmosphere before it falls back to Earth. And if it ends up in the ocean, it sometimes takes more than 3,000 years before it evaporates again. John Mitchell was the first person to speculate about the existence of black holes. It happened in 1783. In his paper, he called them black stars. Unfortunately, his theory was forgotten until the 1970s. Raw sweet potatoes aren't actually sweet, but once you start heating them during cooking, a special enzyme called beta amylase breaks down the tasteless starch, turning it into sugar. The M100 galaxy is 55 million light-years away from Earth. This is a mind-boggling distance. The galaxy itself is 107,000 light-years across. It's a bit bigger than our home Milky Way galaxy. In 2006, Qatar Telecom had a charity auction where they offered a unique phone number, 666-6666. An anonymous bidder bought it for $2.7 million. Showers are famous for being able to spark creativity. When you're taking a warm shower, you usually feel relaxed and happy. Your dopamine level grows, increasing your chances of getting excellent ideas. The hashtag symbol has an official name, Octothorpe. It's a made-up word that was created in the same place where the telephone came from, Bell Laboratories. Back in the past, when there were no terabytes or even gigabytes yet, megabytes used to weigh a lot. The first computer, which was built in 1956, had a hard drive, or something similar to that. This hard drive's capacity was 5 megabytes. But the cabinet it was kept in weighed around 1 ton. Butterflies taste food with their feet because their taste sensors are there. If you were a butterfly, you could taste your pizza just by standing on it. Octopuses lay from 20,000 to 100,000 eggs at a time. The mother octopuses doesn't eat for half a year, protecting the eggs. When baby octopuses get born, they aren't bigger than rice grains. A big oak tree can drink 100 gallons of water a day, and a giant sequoia usually consumes 500 gallons daily. The inhabitants of Setenil de las Bodegas in Spain literally live under a rock. People work, study, and go for a walk beneath a huge rocky outcropping. Their homes are built right into the side of the rock. However hot it is outside, you still won't be able to cook an egg on a sidewalk. The highest sidewalk temperature can be more than 140 degrees Fahrenheit. But to cook an egg, you need at least 158 degrees Fahrenheit. Concrete is a great heat conductor, but it's not hot enough to make breakfast. There is a sea with borders defined not by land, but by ocean currents. It's the Sargasso Sea in the Atlantic Ocean, not far from Bermuda. Several currents create a large still area of salty water filled with floating seaweed. Hummingbirds are tiny creatures, but one particular species, the bee hummingbird, breaks all records. The thing is so minuscule it often gets mistaken for an insect. The bird also weighs less than a dime. Hot chocolate tastes better if you drink it out of an orange cup. Researchers asked 57 volunteers to try the same hot chocolate out of red, cream, white and orange cups. Almost all the participants agreed that the chocolate tastes better when served in orange cups. It proved that the way something is served influences your perception of its taste. Gravity-defying geckos have millions of tiny branched hairs on their bulbous toes. This system lets geckos stick and unstick their feet at breakneck speed, scurrying across surfaces at 20 body lengths per second. It's a proven fact that when you're on the computer, you blink less. In everyday life, you blink around 20 times per minute. But when you're using a computer, it's only 7 times per minute. What's even more interesting, you also read 10% more slowly when you're looking at a computer screen or any other electronic device. African buffalo herds often make decisions by voting. For example, when they choose where to travel, animals would stand up one by one, look in a particular direction, and then lie down again. In most cases, the herd then moves in the direction that's got the most looks. One bamboo species holds the world record for being the fastest growing on Earth. It grows 35 inches per day. When some Massachusetts residents feel like playing a song or two, instead of grabbing a guitar, they go for a typewriter. In 2004, the Boston Typewriter Orchestra performed for the first time. The orchestra members produced unusual music with the help of old typewriters and have already released one album. The horseshoe crab has eyes all over its body. The creature has 10 of them, some on top of the animal shell, some down on its tail, and the rest near its mouth. All these eyes help the crab get around.
If you've ever gotten bored while waiting in a car, like I have, you might have played around with a headrest. Yep, you can pull them off, and they'll come right off relatively easily. It seems useless at first, but that's something you'll want to do if you're ever trapped in a car and need to break a window to get out, like I do. Even a box of aluminum foil has its secret. On the side of the box, you can see a small tab you can push in. So simple, but that's what actually holds the roll of foil in place. This tab makes it way easier to unroll a sheet and tear it off without any frustration. Ever wondered why gripping a certain tool, handle, or even a pen kind of feels more secure when it's coated with a rubbery material? The keratin of the outer layer of the human skin is rough and stiff at a small scale. So let's say you have a polished metal or glass which is stiff but also a smooth and impenetrable surface. When you encounter that, the actual contact area is small, as is the friction at the beginning. Your sweat pores secrete moisture, which is why the keratin gets hydrated and becomes softer. Because of that, it requires many seconds for the contact area to increase to the same value it reaches almost right away with some soft materials like rubber. This mechanism might be used by our tactile senses when we want to identify materials. Now, the pom-poms on beanies and other hats have their purpose, and it's not just to look cute and fluffy. Well, at least they did have a purpose. One of the theories says French sailors used to wear hats with pom-poms so they wouldn't hurt their heads on the ship when the weather got rough. Yup, the ceilings of the ship were really low. When the waves were too big, bang, you could easily hit your head on the ceiling. So the pom-poms came in handy. Now they're just a cute addition to our winter caps. That mysterious drawer under the oven, the one where you keep all your kitchen gear you just don't know where else to put? Well, you used it well in that case, but the drawer was originally designed for keeping your meals warm, at least until you're ready to serve them. And that space under your lower cabinets that protrude slightly and can't be lifted, this area is also called a toe kick. It's the reason why you can stand closer to the counter while cooking. Also, the doors of the cabinets are off the ground, so they'll swing over your toes. The cabinet under the sink isn't for storage either. Maybe that's where you keep your cleaning products, but its real purpose is to give you access if your sinks leak and you need to do some plumbing work. That weird little hole at the top of a lollipop stick you can see after finishing a candy is not a whistle. It has something to do with the manufacturing process. When pouring hot molten caramel into a mold, some of it will seep into this mysterious hole and harden. This way, the candy will stay on the stick and won't fall off. Keyboard letters aren't just randomly arranged the way they are. The first keyboard ever made belonged to the typewriter. Typists eventually got so good at their job, they started typing too quickly. So the key arms would get cross-wired at some point and stuck. That's why manufacturers had to make the order of keys more random to intentionally slow down typists so they could keep the machine running. Do you like to let those brushes on the side of the escalators in malls polish your shoes? Believe it or not, that's not their main gig. The bristles are there for safety. People used to get their bags and clothes stuck in those escalators when they would stand too close to the sides. These nylon bristles kind of play with people's minds, and they keep their feet away from the escalator skirt panels and avoid accidents. Most people assume bobby pins have curves for fashion, which is why they mostly place it in their hair with the wavy side up. But those little waves are actually there to catch the underlying bulk of hair and grip the pin into place, so the wavy side should go down. You've probably noticed measuring tapes mostly come with a metal stub that ends with a small slot. If your hands are full of stuff, simply hang the slot on a nail for measurement. If you take a closer look, you'll see the stub is a little bit serrated on one side. This means you can use it to mark the points, so you don't even need a pencil. If you spend a lot of time in planes, you've probably noticed that little hole located at the bottom of the window. Nothing to be nervous about. It's what keeps us safe while flying high. It's something called a bleed hole. You can see right there in the middle of the pane of the 3 window panes that actually protect passengers from the outside pressure. This hole may be tiny, but it takes all that pressure off the outer one. The hole also gradually exposes it to cabin pressure, which helps with fixing pressure imbalances on the windows, if there are any. There's a number 57 staring at you from the middle of the Heinz ketchup bottle forever. According to the company, only 11% of people are aware the number really has nothing to do with the product label. It's actually a sweet spot where you can tap to get the sauce onto the plate. So, next time you want some ketchup, there's no need to bang the bottom off, just hit this spot. Grooves on the bottom of cups are there to make cleaning them in the dishwasher more convenient. When you place your cups upside down, these grooves will allow the water to flow rather than stagnate. This way, the water won't spill onto your feet when you take the cups out. The grooves are there to allow cool air to flow beneath the cup too. They also keep cups from cracking when they heat up after you pour hot beverages in. You probably noticed that little dot next to the camera on an iPhone and probably thought it was a flash. Nope, not a flash, but a microphone in charge of catching sounds when you're using the back camera. Next time you're looking for a quick bite and decide for fries at McDonald's, check that bendable flap near the top of the box. Some like to bend it towards the fries. That way you can cover your fries up and keep them warm. But if you're not that patient, you can flip the flap backward and basically turn it into a makeshift plate for your fries. Just bend it down firmly enough. You don't want it to spring back up and spread the sauce all over you. Take it from me, it's messy. In the 1970s, people didn't want toothpaste just to keep their mouths healthy, but also to freshen their breath. Aquafresh decided to answer that call, so they added a blue stripe to their product. Since consumers started paying more attention to their teeth and gums, the company added a third red stripe to their paste. The paste now has 3 functions: freshening, cleaning, and plaque control. And yes, solid white toothpaste can offer the same benefits, but brands continue to add stripes to their paste anyway. Speaking of toothpaste, do you know those colors on the bottom of tubes? The colors don't mean anything in particular. They're there to help in the manufacturing by telling light sensors where the end of the tube is. Thanks to it, the machine can cut and seal the tube properly. Hand sanitizers are commonplace nowadays, and you can apply them in many other ways besides just cleaning your hands. It also works great when you want to remove stains from your clothes. Sanitizer breaks up oily, greasy spillages and does a great job as a degreaser. You can even use it as a deodorant if you get caught out on a hot day. The bottom of the bottle mostly has a small odd-shaped notch. It's called a deco lug, and without it, your bottle wouldn't look the way it does now. Such bottles are mass-produced in factories using machinery, and each of them looks the same. Since plastic bottles mostly needed artwork on them, Manufacturers wanted to make sure the artwork always gets printed in the same position for each bottle. So they invented the deco lug, short for decorating lug. It actually holds each bottle at the same orientation in the machine that applies the artwork. Without it, workers would have to watch the whole process and adjust the bottles by hand. Poor Pete. Pete is so scared of bugs, all he wants is to find a place on Earth where he can be safe from them. After years of research and traveling, he eventually finds the place to go – Antarctica. Pete makes it there, confident that bugs wouldn't survive in the cold. Little did he know that insects are on every continent of this planet. Well, not really. He was kind of right about Antarctica. It isn't home to a lot of bugs. In fact, there are only one true species of insect that calls this place home. It's a wingless midge called Belgica antarctica. This fly is tiny, but it's still Antarctica's largest terrestrial bug. Okay, so we've established there's literally no place on Earth you can escape insects. Well, that's not really true either. You might need to learn to swim, though, as the only place that doesn't have any bugs living within is the Earth's surface covered by the ocean. But why do insects hate it here so much? No one could really come up with a definitive explanation, but some think it's because the oceans lack the plants that insects use for food and shelter. They might as well be the largest network of secret agents on the planet, as insects have ears all over the place. Most of the time, though, these ears are not on their heads. Some have ears on their wings, some on their legs, and some even on their abdomens and necks. A lot of these bugs live pretty lonely lives, but there are some of them that actually have families, like the best beetles, for example. They can form family-like units in which both parents work to raise their young. They also have their own vocabulary and speak to each other by squeaking. Should an insect ever fall from a certain height, does it sustain any damage? Well, the subject is a bit more complex, but let's take ants, for example. They don't take any fall damage, and that's because they're so small. A lot of other bugs can technically fall from a height of miles and still be fine. The explanation has a lot to do with math and physics, which the bugs themselves have no time to study. But to put it simply, they're not nearly heavy enough to impact the surface they hit. As they fall, they don't actually gather speed, they slow down. An ant's relatively large surface area for that tiny weight creates a lot of drag as it moves through the air, so it ends up slowing down as it reaches the end of its flight. Speaking of ants, wasn't I doing that? There are about 1 quadrillion of them on the planet at any given moment. That's about 1.4 million ants per human, calculated for a world population of 7.3 billion people. If we put it that way, it's their planet, right? It's hard to imagine a fruit fly with an astronaut helmet on, but they were indeed the first living creatures to be launched into space. That was back in 1947, when they waved goodbye to the Earth in a V-2 rocket, reached an altitude of about 68 miles in less than 200 seconds. They then returned to Earth by parachute. Not all insects are that lucky. For example, caterpillars have a total of 12 eyes but are basically blind. Their simple little eyes can only distinguish between light and dark, so they can't actually see a clear picture of what's in front of them. And no, glasses won't help if that's what you're thinking. Some insects actually put a lot of work into their dating life. A good example is the stoneflies, which do push-ups to attract the ladies. Did you know butterflies taste the surroundings with their feet? Heard that right. That's because they have taste sensors on their feet that help them find food. So they stand on a leaf and give it a taste. If they figure out the plant is something that their caterpillars can eat, they place their eggs in this spot. But how do they eat, since they can't bite or chew? Well, they use their long tongue, which looks more like a tube, called a proboscis. It's basically a straw that helps butterflies to slurp up liquids, like nectar, for example. The ancestors of this crafty creature had lived on this planet way before the dinosaurs themselves. Fossil records show that ancient grasshoppers first came up more than 300 million years ago. Ever heard of bugs that are fans of rock music? Well, in a way, termites do, sort of, prefer this sound. Termites chew away at wood to figure out what kind of wood they have lying around. They use vibrations. Why? Because it helps them find the best source of food. If there's heavy metal or rock music playing, they can chew through the wood faster than at their regular speed. Do they slow their chewing down with Brahms or Bach, or just go to sleep? This is one type of insect you'll surely find difficult to see. This master of disguise looks like a leaf. Throughout their existence, they managed to develop this type of camouflage so the predators miss them in plain sight. They can even rock back and forth to copy the movement made by leaves blown by the wind. Nature has its own weather forecasters, the mighty crickets. Well, they work more like a thermometer, if you like. Turns out you can manually calculate the temperature outside by counting the cricket chirps you hear in a minute and then divide it by 4. You should then add 40 to that number you get, and there you have it, an estimated temperature number in Fahrenheit. Crickets even have their own unique song, which they use to attract mates and defend their territory. Yes, music that repels and attracts at the same time. You should consider ladybugs if you're interested in free gardening services. That's because they feed on other insects, some that can actually damage your plants. They can keep fruit flies and other mites at bay. A ladybug might end up eating more than 5,000 insects in its lifetime, which adds up to about a year. Let's get into some awesome data about the busy bees. Their wings can beat 190 times per second. Now, I'll do the math for you. That's 11,400 times a minute. What a workout! Well, they do need that strength, since a single honeybee colony can produce around 220 pounds of honey each year. That's a staggering 220 jars. It's nature's equivalent of a factory. But you'd have to teach bees to make honey. It's not in their instinct to do so. Another fascinating aspect of bees' life is that the temperature inside any beehive is always around 93 degrees, regardless of the outside weather. That's because they're really good at insulating their surroundings. Bees also have different stomachs for eating and for storing honey. It's the bee's equivalent of not doing business while you're eating. Okay, now don't jump out of your chair just yet, as you might actually enjoy some of these facts about spiders. They do help a lot with maintaining our crops free from other insects. So, if you think about it, we do have something to thank them for. Their eyesight is also incredible. They can see spectrums of light that we can't, like UVA and UVB light. And speaking of their superpowers, a strand of spider silk is 5 times stronger than a strand of steel, of the same thickness, of course. Some scientists believe that if spiders were as large as humans, certainly hope not, their web could stop objects as big as airplanes. And that spider silk, it's actually a liquid, but it does harden when exposed to air. They're also quite sneaky themselves and have evolved to look more like ants. Why? So they can better avoid other predators and hunt ants better. Spiders don't have wings, that's for sure, but the jumping ones can hop up to 50 times their own length. Well, otherwise, I still get the heebie-jeebies when I think about spiders. How about you?
There are days when we feel tired and energy drained even after a good night's sleep. Fatigue and apathy may have a wide variety of reasons that differ for all people. Even a small solar storm 93 million miles away from the Earth can make your neurons work weaker. Studies have revealed that solar storms are so massive that they can desynchronize our biological clock and cause excessive sleepiness and laziness. That's because electromagnetic activity generated by the disturbance of the sun influences the pineal glands in our brains. Although this gland is very tiny, it plays the role of a big boss in your endocrine system. The pineal gland regulates many vital functions in the human body. One of its key responsibilities is to collect information about the exterior lighting and release melatonin. This hormone helps us relax and go to sleep. Abnormal electromagnetic activities cause excessive production of melatonin, which can result in fatigue and sleepiness even in the middle of the day. But don't rush to put on a handmade tinfoil hat. Luckily, we have some universal tips that you can try at home to reboot your energy levels. No worries, you don't have to buy any expensive special equipment. All you need is your own body and 2 minutes of your precious time. Place all fingers of both your hands together except for your thumbs. Check whether the second joints of each finger are aligned up. Apply gentle pressure by squeezing the fingers together. Once you put the joint over the joint and bone on bone. Don't stop using force and keep pressing for 1 minute. At some point, you may feel changes in your sinuses, which are the hollow spaces behind your eyes, cheekbones, and in your forehead. You may feel a gradual release of pressure in this area, and your nose may even begin to leak. If you try this exercise with someone else, you'll probably notice that the symptoms are different for different people. After 1 minute, release your fingers and relax your arms completely. Well, can you feel any changes in your body? Some of you may hear a slight ringing sound in the ears, experience dripping from the eustachian tubes, or think that the area around your cheekbones and forehead became lighter. You can use this trick anytime during the day when you feel the need to recharge your battery and restore your inner peace. You can exercise even in the middle of a school test, first date with your crush, or during a stressful business meeting. No one's gonna know, it'll be our secret. This refreshing effect appears thanks to our wise and complicated anatomy. Reflexology works so well because the nervous system in your hands is directly interconnected with your head, brain, and sinuses. Hands are rich in particular pressure points that can be very helpful when you need an emergency tool to release pain and reboot your brain. When you simulate one of these reflexology points, neurotransmitters in your brain inevitably react. It means that you can trick your brain and make it tell the body to feel good and enthusiastic. And it's absolutely free, if you know the right button, of course. So let's dive into the world of superpowers hidden in your hands and explore some of the major points. But if you're currently pregnant, be careful and get your doctor's approval before working with these points. Reflexology might stimulate blood pressure changes in your body and cause an unnecessary hormonal response. One of the points is located over here on your anterior forearm. Its name is Naiguan, or pericardium 6, because it's part of the so-called pericardium channel that stretches inside the arm from the armpit area up to the middle finger. You can find the Naiguan point between the tendons by measuring 4 fingers below your wrist. If you can't see the area between the tendons clearly, clench your fist. Tension in your arm will make the tendons more obvious. Now, open your fist, relax the hand, and massage this depression once the point is detected. Apply gentle pressure for 4 to 5 seconds. Do this exercise equally on both hands and see if you feel any difference. You can also massage the entire area afterwards to relax the arm if necessary. During this exercise, you should start feeling relaxation that can spread all through the inside of the arm and across into the inside of the chest. If you don't feel any difference, don't get upset and just try again later. Acupuncture masters work with this point to help people feel more energized and focused, ease an upset stomach and headaches, and help release discomfort in the arms and chest. Some say it's also good for reducing anxiety and travel sickness. Acupressure works by balancing the body's energy flows. These techniques work better when you're completely relaxed. If you're performing this exercise on someone else, you may want to ask them to lie down and let them relax completely. There's another magical pressure point nearby called Zhongzhou. It can help ease neck tension, temporal headaches, and shoulder and upper back pain. This point is usually pretty easy to detect. It's located behind the knuckles in the groove shaped by the tendons of the ring and little fingers. Apply firm pressure to this depression for 4 to 5 seconds. You should feel pleasant flows of relaxation in the arms and cervical spine. Here's Here's another magical button that is very helpful when experiencing anxiety or headache. Find this pressure point in the webbing between your thumb and index finger. Use your index finger and thumb to apply firm pressure to the webbing between your other hand's thumb and index finger. Slowly and gently massage the point for 4 to 5 seconds and then change hands. If you still feel drained after stimulating all the mentioned pressure points, it's time to look around. Chances are that the weather is to blame for your fatigue. If you're in a warm car outdoors on a sweltering day or in a hot classroom, it's pretty natural to feel tired and sleepy. Although we know that heat makes us tired, not many know why exactly. First of all, when it's hot, your body begins to send fluid and blood to the surface of your body to cool down. This process spends some of your body's resources, which can leave you feeling tired. Secondly, keep in mind that dehydration always causes sleepiness and fatigue. When it's hot, your body quickly loses salt and fluid in the form of sweat. Sometimes it's not the heat that makes you feel drained, but rather water misbalance that happens as a result. So drinking sufficient water is crucial if you want to feel energized during the day. And if you prefer stimulating your brain with coffee, remember that caffeinated drinks may act like a diuretic, which means that they can cause slight dehydration within your body. Therefore, it's recommended to be careful with consuming too much coffee and drink still water to replenish the natural balance. Speaking of temperatures, studies have revealed that too cold or too hot a workplace can make it difficult for office workers to focus on their daily duties. In one of the surveys, 22% of workers complained that too hot a workspace negatively affected their concentration, and another 11% of polled people said that too cold a workplace made it hard to work. Those temperature preferences may vary depending on a person's metabolic rates and physiological habits. Helsinki University of Technology and the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory researched and discovered the highest productivity temperature. It's about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, if the temperature rises higher to around 74 degrees Fahrenheit, the overall enthusiasm at the workplace begins to fall. So, if you're not satisfied with your workplace temperature, it makes sense to dress in layers or move to a conference room where you can adjust the air conditioner as you like. Perhaps it will help you boost work productivity. And if not, remember the magical reflexology tricks we discussed earlier.
So get this, an extra hole at the upper part of the sink has multiple hidden functions. First, in case someone forgets to close the tap, the water won't overflow and the bathroom won't get flooded. Second, thanks to that hole, the water drains faster and it gives an escape for the air, helping the water flow down. Those two holes on a side of any Converse shoe are not only to let the stinky air out. Sure, breathability is important for any athlete. The second reason is that athletes lace through those holes to get a better grip. Donuts have a hole in the middle and it doesn't stand for O in donut. It's not designed for an easier grip either, though it can be quite convenient. It's actually made this way for mass baking so that they can cook all the way through evenly. Baby carrots are tiny and, unlike regular carrots, wet. Baby carrots aren't some special sort of carrots. They're actually made of regular carrots by cutting off the skin and outer layers and then polishing them to look that pretty. The problem is that they can't retain moisture. A regular carrot retains some water inside because of the layers that locks it in. Once they're chopped out, baby carrots can dry out easily, so they usually sell them in bags with some water inside. Toy stores are filled with Beanie Baby plush toys, and a detail that is even more iconic than their huge eyes is their tags saying TY. That's a small manufacturing company not so many people have heard of. Beanie Babies appeared in 1993 and they went insanely popular. TY is the name of the company, but it's not an abbreviation. It's the actual name of the company's founder, H. Ty Warner. Most metallic zippers have a hidden lock inside them to save you from awkward situations, such as an undone fly. Oh boy. Don't leave the zipper handle in an upward position. When you pull it downwards, it automatically locks. It's all thanks to those tiny grooves hidden underneath the handle. Almost any public toilet has a large gap between the floor and the door. The reason for such a zero privacy thing is to actually minimize the level of privacy and comfort so that people wouldn't stay there long and there'd be no lines. It's also easier to clean and safer if some emergency occurs. Headrests in a car are about comfort, and detachable headrests are about safety. If you pull the headrest out of a seat, you'll see two bars, which are quite sturdy. If you ever get locked or trapped in a car, you can get out of there smashing the window with these bars. Many cups and mugs have little grooves on the bottom on purpose. They're designed for dishwashing machines. The grooves let the water flow and not spill over your feet when you take the cup out. Also, those grooves let the air flow, so the cup doesn't crack even if the tea is scalding. Almost all measuring tapes have a metal tip with a small slot on the end. You can use this slot to hang the tape on a nail or a screw to make measurements without anyone's help. Sometimes this tip has a row of sharp points along the edge on one side. That comes in handy when you want to leave a mark without using a pencil. Doorknobs are usually made of brass, bronze, and some other copper alloys for a reason. They have an antibacterial effect, so they stop microbes from spreading. They get rid of a range of harmful germs pretty fast, within a couple of hours. But don't forget to wash your hands anyway. Grocery carts have loops for a reason. You don't want to put your jacket in a cart next to potatoes and onions. Hang it on a loop. This little hook-like thing is there to help you better organize the space in your cart. The carts also have a super handy grid. Whenever the cart's full, you just need to lift the grid and attach the shopping basket for extra purchases, placing it in between the horizontal bar above the wheels and the hooks the grid has. A point in an ointment cap is there for a reason too. Most tubes are usually sealed with foil, and it's better to avoid opening it with fingers unless you're ready to say goodbye to your nails. A point easily opens even the most safely sealed tube. Silica gel can often be found in different things you buy like bags, shoes, and many others. Don't throw it away. It's meant to absorb excess moisture, so anytime your shoes are a bit wet, just throw in a packet with silica gel. People used to co-live with rats, and these guys like gnawing on everything they see in their way, including paper. Still, rats weren't able to chew more than the space left on the margins. That black grate on a microwave isn't just some fancy decoration. It's called a Faraday shield, and it prevents the rays from escaping the microwave. It also speeds up the heating, so you can enjoy yesterday's leftovers faster. It may also block phone signals, so if you're tired of numerous calls, just put the phone into a microwave. But don't turn it on. All Tic Tac containers are designed to dispense one Tic Tac every time you open it. The lid has the same shape as the candy. Turn the container upside down, gently shake it, and open it slowly. You'll notice only one candy stuck between those lid grooves. So if you just open the container and shake it until 5 or even more candies fall into your mouth, it means you've been eating Tic Tacs wrong all this time. Those little holes in the airplane windows are designed to control the cabin pressure. They also protect the windows from fogging up as the temperatures drop and rise. By the way, the airplane window is round for a reason. This way, pressure is evenly distributed so it doesn't get deformed. Blue bristles on a toothbrush are actually an indicator that it's just about time to change the brush. As the bristles get in contact with water, the blue, or whatever other, pigment fades away, so the more you use it, the duller the color becomes. A triple handle on a jerry can is there to make it easier for two people to carry it and distribute the fuel evenly. Gas cans often have a second hole that actually needs to be uncapped too before you pour the gas. The air passage will prevent it from pouring out, so no more fuel waste. Jeans first appeared in 1873. They were invented by Jacob Davis and Levi Strauss. Davis was a tailor who was producing covers and tents, and Strauss was a businessman who, among other things, was selling cloth. The first jeans were made by Davis from denim, the fabric he bought from Levi Strauss & Co. Together, they patented the design. Blue was a standard color for denim that was dyed using an indigo dye. The blue color is a tradition that is still often followed today to replicate the original look of a pair of jeans. Jeans also have metal rivets, and they've been there from the very beginning. Jacob Davis, the man who made the first pair of jeans, added copper rivets to spots where pants were more likely to rip, flies, and pockets to make them stronger. Today, they have more of a decorative purpose since they're distinctive and traditional for jeans. Another special thing about jeans is those tiny pockets they have that seemingly serve no purpose. Well, maybe it's true now, but years ago, when many cowboys were wearing jeans, the pocket was made specifically to keep a pocket watch there. Also, back then, a pair of jeans had just 4 pockets. That tiny pocket, the watch pocket, 2 big pockets in front, and just 1 pocket on the back. Many zippers have the letters YKK engraved on them. It's an abbreviation that stands for the name of the company that can be translated as Yoshida Manufacturing Shareholding Company. This Japanese company is the largest zipper manufacturer in the world, so they put their initials on all the zippers they produce. That's around half of the zippers in the world. And that's why you see their zippers more often than any other zippers. Those little white golf balls have dimples all over them. It turns out they aren't there just randomly. At first, golfers were playing with a smooth ball. With time, the ball would get all punched and damaged, but also it would start to travel way further. The reason here is aerodynamics. Dimples allow the air to flow more smoothly around the ball, taking it further. So the idea was adopted and the balls got their dimples all around, allowing them to travel longer distances.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.